Let's call this meeting to order. This is a regular scheduled meeting of the Anchorage Assembly on December 7th, 2010. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call.
Ms. Drummond. Here. Mr. Birch.
Here.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Present. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Here.
Ms. Osiander. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Next time is Pledge of Allegiance. Paul, could you listen to the pledge, please, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Paul. Next item is minutes of previous meetings. There are none. Mayor's report, Mr. Mayor, sir.
No report today, sir.
Thank you. Assembly Chair's report. There isn't one. We've got a lot of business to do. Committee reports. Let me start down with Debbie. Mike?
No report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Paul?
Tomorrow meeting for the Public Safety Committee, Mr. Chairman, at 8 p.m., noon, at the Assembly Conference Room, and we'll be talking with the Spice K2, and as well, it's on my agenda, and I apologize, but we'll be having a meeting marked as scheduled noon, Assembly Conference.
Thank you. Ernie?
No report.
Our illustrious Budget Chairman?
None, sir.
Paul? Pat?
Pat.
Okay. Elvie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had some really great notes, except I can't find them. Anyway, with that said, I'll just go from memory. Harriet, Ms. Drummond and I had the opportunity to attend the National League of Cities conference last week, and it was really, as usual, a wonderful conference. I've been attending since 1999. And anyway, I'm currently serve on the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee, and we had a wonderful afternoon going over about 18 resolutions to present to for national policy at the business meeting that was held on Saturday. Most of the resolutions were accepted, and it's information that we'll use when in D.C. in March on Capitol Hill. Also, at the meeting, Ms. Drummond and I attended a meeting to talk about a free prescription discount program that the National League of Cities offers member cities, and it's really, really a great program. It has a lot of benefits. You save lots of money. I remember one example, Clarksburg, West Virginia. I think the population is like 15,000, and they saved $291,000. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield to Ms. Drummond to talk a little bit more about our activities in Denver last week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Elvie. Let me go to Chris for a second. He's between the two of you. Chris?
No report.
Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you heard, I also attended the National League of Cities, and I'm very excited about the prescription discount card program. This is something that, for a very small membership fee, that this community has been paying for many, many years, and there's some more about the many years part coming shortly. Every citizen in our community who uses prescription drugs will be able to save money on the purchase of prescription drugs. Anchorage is now at the point where national pharmacies are opening here. Target and Walmart, of course, have been here for a long time, but the recent opening of Walgreens stores has enabled Anchorage to take advantage of this program for its citizens at no extra cost to the municipality. Cards will be made available for citizens, and in about 2 months there will be a press conference, and this show will go on the road, and I'm very excited about it. I attended a number of workshops, and naturally we heard many keynote speakers. Among the workshops were many on the economy. I'm telling you folks, Anchorage is in really good shape compared to the rest of the states in this union. Anchorage and Alaska were at the top of the list in terms of how they're doing as far as the economy and job creation. It was quite interesting to see. Anchorage received an award on Saturday morning that Ms. Gray Jackson and I were happy to accept. Anchorage has been a member of the National League of Cities for 50 years. It hasn't even been a municipality for 50 years, but we are members for 50 years, and I'm going to present this to the chair.
Gee, an award for being a member.
Mr. Mayor, come on down to the podium. You are the mayor of this town. Give this to you. I think there's a display case in your floor for these.
Okay, stay there while we get a picture, because Sarah will want one. As soon as I figure out how to do this. And I'm getting paid based on my capabilities as a photographer. Okay. A bit closer. I didn't think you were here. Okay, I thought you were here.
Is that all, Harriet?
I could talk for a long time, but I just want to tell you briefly about the final keynote speaker, was Jeb Bush, the former governor of the state of Florida, who is now the president of a distinguished national panel on education. He talked about the state of education and immigration in our communities and the things that our communities are and are not doing. And I thought it would be very interesting, since our mayor is proposing an education summit this year, that our fellow assembly members might be interested in the Institute for Youth Education and Families, which was promoted at that final keynote speech at which Mr. Bush spoke.
Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. We're now down to addendum to the agenda. If I could get a motion to incorporate, I'll go through it.
Second.
Okay. We have a lot of paperwork tonight. Yes, ma'am. Microphone, yes. I was going to get another motion on the late on, but we can incorporate it. Okay, on the addendum to the agenda, item 9D9, it's a memorandum AM 654, 2010, recognition award to Animal Licensing and Placement Services to provide animal care and control services to the Municipality of Anchorage Department of Health and Human Services, RFP 2010-P0131, $1,851,300 from purchasing. Item 9D10 is a memorandum, AM 655, 2010, sole source award to HDW Electronics, Inc., HDW to provide cable and fault locator and accessories to the Municipality of Anchorage, Municipal Light and Power Utility, MLNP, $58,730. Item 9D11 is a memorandum, AM 657, 2010, approval of multi-year management agreement for the William A. Egan and Denida Civic and Convention Center between the Municipality of Anchorage, MOA, and the Anchorage Convention and Visitors Bureau, ACVB, purchasing. Item 9D12, same memorandum, AM 658, 2010, temporary appointment of Assistant Ombudsman from Assembly Chair Training. Item 9F10, an ordinances and resolutions for introduction. Resolution AR 2010-360, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating a supplemental award of $750,000 to the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Violence Against Women, to the Federal Cargo Grants Fund 241, to the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Program in the Department of Health and Human Services. Public hearing requested is 1/11/11. There's a semi-memorandum that comes with an A. The semi-memorandum AM 653, 2010. Under old business, unfinished actions on public hearing items. Item 11F3, Ordinance AO 2010-81S1. An ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending the Anchorage Municipal Code and Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations to modify existing and to include additional fees, fines, and penalties, and to modify excise taxes on motor vehicle registration and aircraft. Office of Management and Budget. There is an item 11F4, Assembly Memorandum AM 651-2010A. Dropping down to item 11G2, Ordinance AO 2010-72S, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage adopting and appropriating funds for the 2011 General Government Operating Budget for the Municipality of Anchorage, Office of Management and Budget. Item 11G3, Assembly Memorandum AM 530-2010A. Now, we've also got a late on the table. I'm going to go through that one with you. Late on the table, there is item 9D13 on the consent agenda. Assembly Memorandum AM 682-2010, approval of participation by the municipality of approval of participation by the municipality in litigation relating to the former biathlon range at Kincaid Park with outside counsel. Reeves Amodio, Department of Law. Thank you. Under item 11, old business, unfinished action on public hearing items, clerk note, action on the following memorandum will be taken up after reconsideration of resolution AR 2010-333. This is item 11E2. Sorry, I used my black pen a little too thick. Assembly Memorandum AM 600-210A, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage appropriating $800,000 of federal seized and forfeited monies to the Federal State Fine and Forfeiture Fund 257 for use by the Anchorage Police Department. Item 11J2, Ordinance AO 2010-73S, an ordinance adopting and appropriating funds for the 2011 Municipal Utilities Enterprise Activities Operating Budget and the 2011 Municipal Utilities Enterprise Activities Capital Budget, Office of Management and Budget. There is an item 11J3, Assembly Memorandum AM 536-2010A. There's an item on here, 11K3, Resolution AR 2010-292S1, a resolution approving the 2011-2016 Municipal Utilities Enterprise Activities Capital Improvement Budget Program. Office of Management and Budget. Item 11K4, Assembly Memorandum AM 541-2010A. Under new public hearings, item 14H2, Resolution AR 2010-357S, a resolution of the Municipality Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving alcoholic beverages conditional use for a package store use and licensing number 2614 in the B1A Local and Neighborhood Business District for Tesoro North Star Company doing business as To Go Tesoro, located at 500 Hollywood Drive on East Government Hills subdivision of the Alaska Railroad Block 6, Lot 1A, generally located on the southwest corner of East Loop Road and Hollywood Drive, Government Hill Community Council, case number 210-140, from Assembly Vice Chairman Flynn. Is there anything else that needs added to the agenda?
Act menacing when you say that.
What? I'll come and hunt you down. Is there any objection to the inclusion of the addendum and laid on the table items? Okay, we've amended the document in front of us then. That's been approved by the body. It's been added to the agenda, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Did I miss one?
No.
Okay. Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. I need a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
I believe we have a motion to approve. We need to do a motion to pull.
No.
We didn't have it? Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul. Move to approve.
Move to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Got it. You got it.
Now we're going to go through those things that we want to pull. And on the addendum to the agenda, I need to pull item 9D12, a same memorandum 658-2010, a temporary appointment. Unfortunately, she's not going to be able to work with us, so we've got to pull that one. Thank you. Debbie?
Thank you. On the regular agenda, I'd like to pull 9E2, and on the addendum to the agenda, I'd like to pull 9 Delta 9.
9 Delta 9?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to pull 9 Delta 8. That's all.
9 Delta 8. Where's that little critter at? 98, okay. Anything else, Mike? Paul?
No items, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ernie?
No items, Mr. Chair.
Bill?
No items.
Pat?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer? Elvie?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chris?
No items.
Harriet?
No items, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Administration? I already did it and killed it.
No, you didn't do it. You said somebody needs to pull it.
I will pull it. Go ahead if you want. Pat, before I get to administration, would you pull item 9D12, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item 9 Delta 12, please.
Thank you. Administration?
Is it nothing?
Okay. Ready? Please vote on the balance of the consent agenda. That was unanimous on all the items that were not pulled for a little further discussion. Administration, did you have anybody appointed to a board or commission you'd like to identify?
We did, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know if any of them are here, but if they are, if you were recently appointed to a board or commission, please come forward to the microphone, tell us your name and what board or commission you were appointed to.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Dunham. I was appointed to the Health and Human Services Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Al Millspaw, Animal Control Advisory Board.
Well, you're going to have fun.
Don't discourage you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm Darrell Hess. I was appointed to the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the people you've appointed. There's nobody else, and we're moving on down. We're now down to those items that pull for a little further discussion. The first one is on, page 2. Item 9D8. Mr. Gutierrez pulled this, the same memorandum, AM 639-2010, change order number 1 to professional services contract number 201-00325 with the Wilson Agency, LLC, for the municipality of Anchorage. Mr. Gutierrez, sir, you pulled.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. To the administration, I apologize. I think I may have just answered my own question a moment ago by reading a bit more closely. These are things that are added to the initial contract. These are things that weren't covered by the contract when it was initially passed. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Gutierrez, that's correct.
Okay. Can you give us some just a brief explanation of why these additions are necessary? There's a lot of detail on what they're doing, but why are these necessary and why the need for another $61,000?
So I don't have the list in front of me, and I apologize because I should. If Fred has it here, some of these were issues that came up specifically during the past year, and particularly with respect to the health care reform legislation. There was a concern that we didn't have all of the information and analysis of how those new reforms were going to affect us. We did have an audit evaluation for the Gentilly Police and Fire Group that we should have budgeted and did not
have that in it during the core. The opt-out compliance review, as you know, we did initiate an opt-out program for people who have double insurance, and we needed to have them review how that would affect our contracts. We did do open enrollment, as you know, that went to an online process this year, and they provided some consulting on that. And again, benefits, legal support, things that we hadn't anticipated. We did receive two or three grievances during the past year from unions associated with some of our benefits programs, and they assisted us with the evaluation. It was dealing with the conversion from the Premier plan to ODS.
All right.
So, short answer, they all were things that we hadn't anticipated that came up that they assisted us with this year.
Mr. Chairman, that's all. I just had some concerns about why this was being added, and I think those have been answered. Thank you, sir.
Any other concerns from Assembly members? If not, ask unanimous consent. So no objection, that item is approved. Madam Clerk. Next item is on the addendum to the agenda. It's item 9D9, the same memorandum, AM 654, 2010, regulation of award, animal licensing and placement services. Ms. Osiander, you pulled that.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Osiander.
I have a question for administration on this. Specifically, line 53 of the contract apparently gives an incentive for vacated notices of violations. My concern is, in the past year, I've heard complaints of lack of response or lack of timely response, and to see a bonus for vacated notice of violation concerns me a lot. I've heard concerns that an animal cruelty case was not investigated for an extended period of time. I've heard complaints about a dog bite that wasn't investigated for an extended period of time and then was dropped. Could you give me some reassurance? It seems to me there should be a bonus for timely response, not for vacating notice. Could somebody speak to that?
Ms. Ingalls?
Hello. Ms. Osiander, through the chair, Diane Ingalls, Department of Health and Human Services. I hear what you're saying, so I guess that what I I don't know that I would consider this a bonus. What we're saying is that if they if 90% of what they bring forward is supported by evidence and not vacated, then they get an incentive for that. But I can see how you might interpret it that way to be a not recommended for enforcement. There are other places in the contract, I believe, but I would need a few minutes to look that up, that talks to them about timely enforcement and what the expectations are. And so I guess the way I understood this was that you didn't, that the maximum number of violations, that 90% of the time what they brought forward was upheld, and so that we were encouraging them to give citations that were appropriate.
Mike, I read this, that you can get up to $6,800 per year if you increase the vacated notice of violations, and that could be done, it seems to me, fairly simply if the officer who responds just decides to drop it and doesn't encourage or discourages the person who called the complaint from doing any kind of further complaining, then they still get the bonus. Is this too late to amend? Has the contract basically been written to include this incentive at this point?
Ms. Osiander, through the chair, it is not too late to amend the contract at this point. It has been negotiated, agreement has been made, however, the contract has not been signed. However, I do think that you are misinterpreting the intent of this statement. To vacate means that they have not done their job, basically. In other words, If a complaint is made, they file, and if they fail to document it properly, then it becomes something that could be vacated. And if that vacated complaint causes it to go over 10%, then they lose their bonus.
If I could elaborate, specifically, I know of 2 cases where people have talked to me that the enforcement officer said, well, you don't have enough proof. You have to have an external witness who saw the attack. You have to have pictures to show that there's a loose dog. And so it seems to me all they have to do is do that, and they would get the bonus. Am I inaccurate? Am I misunderstanding?
Yes, ma'am. You're interpreting it just the opposite of the intent. In other words, they get a bonus provided that they have proved their case 90% of the time, as a minimum.
So just don't pursue a case and you get something, no?
Well, through the chair, Ms. Osander, I mean, I guess that's one interpretation, but the code is pretty clear about what's required for evidence. And whenever we get complaints that are sent to our office where the people speak to us, Ms. Fetco investigates those with animal control, and we work very closely with them to try to make sure that any frustration is there. But there are people who become very frustrated with their neighbors' animals, and Title 17 does have certain requirements of standards of proof, and sometimes those are things like having, so many minutes of barking or having certain evidence that we need in order to proceed. So this could be more of an issue with Title 17 and what's required as a standard of evidence than animal care and control, but anytime you get a complaint from a constituent, we're happy to investigate that, and we've never had a problem with the contractor in getting information and trying to work successfully to resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to postpone this till our next meeting so I have time to pursue at greater length.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any objection to the administration? Would this cause a problem if we postpone to the...
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection to postponing this to the 14th, our next meeting? I'm not saying thanks, Ms. Osander. Let's see if we can get an answer, definitive answer back to you. Thank you, ma'am. Next item in front of us,
9 Delta 12.
9 Delta 12, thank you. 9 Delta 12, and I asked you to pull that if you would, Pat, and you did.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just move to postpone this item indefinitely.
Thank you. Is there a second? Ask unanimous consent, see no objection, item is postponed indefinitely.
I was.
Has nothing at all to do with Tony. I would love to have her work with us. On page 2, on the consent agenda, item 9E2, Information Memorandum AIM 130-2010, update on the use of energy efficiency and conservation block grant funds. That was pulled by you, Ms. Osander.
Yes, sir, thank you. Move to accept.
Ma'am?
I have a problem.
What?
2 problems, actually, with this that I wanted to bring to the Assembly's attention.
Debbie, the clerk would like you to use your button.
I'm sorry.
They're both on, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's right. Whoop, there. Okay. I wanted to bring to the attention, first off, it's over a $200,000 grant to the McDowell Group for a housing market analysis. This is something that has never been recommended by the Title 21 Committee, and it seems to me that it should be under the purview of private business and economy on what type of houses people want. I think that, well, frankly, I think it's a waste of money, and I very much wish that there'd been some opportunity to consult before the contract was let. The second item I want to bring to your attention is the outdoor lighting study. I got a response that I probably should clarify with the administration. If this is for putting in energy-effective lighting in retrofitting our buildings, that's great. But basically, my understanding is this is in relating to the Title 21 revision, where we basically decided to postpone the whole lighting section because there's 2 national groups that are reviewing lighting standards, and we want to be sure that there is some general accord with what's acceptable or ideal practice. And if this is pursuing those national standards, then I think it's a waste of money and should not be spent. So, my two gripes on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments from any other semi-members? Yes, Mr. Honeman.
Mr. Chairman, I just was noticing, too, I did read through it, but I, for some reason, missed the big bold at the bottom, the intergovernmental chargeback of $106,000 as additional charges. Is that multiple agencies or departments within the municipality that would get that out? Or is that one charge to a specific department?
To administration?
To administration. It's the last item just before the prepared by on line 27.
Mr. Chairman, that's across departments for the entire grant.
Across all the departments?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the semi-members? Any objection to accepting this item? Seeing none, that item is accepted unanimously by the body. We're now on page... Yes, sir, I'm now on page...
That's it.
Actually, continue... We're on page 3, old and finished action on public hearing items. First item in front is item 11A, Resolution AR 2010-343, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing the period of 1980 to 2010 as the Tony Jones era for the Anchorage Planning and Zoning Commission. There is a motion on the floor.
Second.
Been second, ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, that is approved by the body. Tony, come and visit us.
Mr. Trainee, don't make me cry.
I wouldn't do that to you, Tony. Who's reading, who's presenting?
I will read. I'll read, Mr. Chair.
Okay, who's presenting?
I do not know.
Mr. Hull, are you going to present or do you want me to? You're going to do it? I'm presenting. Okay.
And I'm not sure if I'm reading or not. Barbara?
Go ahead, read.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie.
Well, I'm a little tardy. Hold on. Here we go.
It's going to make me cry.
This is a resolution recognizing the period 1980 to 2010 as the Tony Jones era for Anchorage's Planning and Zoning Commission, whereas it is a goal of the municipality of Anchorage to put a high value on community service. Whereas Tony Jones has served on the Anchorage Planning Commissions for over 25 years, began with the Platting Board from 78 to 80, followed by the Planning and Zoning Commission from 80 to 91, and from 98 through 2010. Whereas Ms. Jones served as chair of the commission for many of these years, modeling scrupulous integrity and setting a high standard for fairness to all parties, petitioners, public, and fellow commissioners. And whereas Ms. Jones participated in many commission subcommittees with great dedication. And whereas Ms. Jones was appointed by 5 mayors with varying ideas on how great communities are built. And whereas in her era of service she addressed transforming influences of our community, including the state and local economic boom years of the early 80s, the economic crash of the late 80s, the adoption of multiple municipal plans, including a new comprehensive plan in 82 and again in 2001, and a rewrite of Anchorage's land use laws in Title 21. Whereas Ms. Jones has guided fellow commissioners as well as staff with solid legal knowledge and with irreplaceable institutional knowledge from having reviewed many projects repeatedly over the years. And whereas Ms. Jones has shown an unwavering dedication to fair and open democratic process, particularly by encouraging citizens to speak at public meetings, public hearings, with special encouragement to Anchorage youth who dared to attend and to speak at a public hearing. Whereas Ms. Jones could be counted on to speak firmly to any entity that appeared to disregard the advice given by the Commission, to which I can personally attest. Whereas Ms. Jones has shared her experience by teaching college classes in planning and serving as a leader of the Alaska branch of the American Planning Association. And whereas Ms. Jones is committed to the public good and understands the importance of justly balancing many community perspectives and interests that build a vibrant and resilient community. And whereas Ms. Jones is not done yet.
No.
Therefore, the Assembly recognizes the period of 1980 through 2010 as the Tony Jones era for Anchorage's Planning and Zoning Commission. Passed and approved this day. Congratulations, Tony.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you all very much. And thank you to Mr. Mayor. And I would like to ask my husband, Tom Jones, to stand up. Come on, sweetheart. For all the many birthdays and anniversaries and family events that I missed, because, Mr. Mayor, if you look back at my attendance record going back to 1978, you'll just see just about the only times I was absent was when I needed to have an emergency operation, and I was in the hospital, and because I took my service very seriously for the citizens of Anchorage. Thank you.
Oh, Tony, you're not leaving yet.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Mr. Starcer?
Well, Ms. Jones, I'm out of character because typically I just let those come and go without comment, but I couldn't let you go without communicating my experience, and it's one that you may remember, maybe not. In addition to all those things that we said nice about you, you treated me and others that entered into this public service work as a coach. And I remember distinctly, and I'll keep it short, but I looked at you one evening and I said, I waved this planning and zoning document that I had as I was a newly appointed member, and I said, I don't agree with this. And she said, Ms. Jones says, we'll move an amendment. And I thought that was the weirdest thing to do, but I made an amendment and I had it passed. And by the time I got home, even before emails were real popular, you had sent me a note saying the community is better. Congratulations on your first amendment. And I was moved by that because you took the time on a very busy evening to keep us grounded on what we're there to do, and that was to serve the public. So thank you for that, and I appreciate your skill in moving me to other things, and I'm happy to be here, and I have a lot to say about my ability to serve the public is due to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have more. Paul?
Well, Tony, I just wanted to thank you again for your many years of service to this community, particularly in an area where a lot of many ideas, sometimes conflicting ideas, meet in the same room and sometimes in the same forum. And you've always been passionate, but at the same time you do use good demeanor and provide that opportunity for people to get together and come together and with some consensus and energy. So thank you for your many years of service. And thanks again, Mr. Jones, for allowing her to do that, again, on sometimes birthdays and anniversaries. I recognize that myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I was saving mine for the end, but Tony, thank you for working with us all these years. You and I go way back.
Way back.
Way back. To back when I had hair, which who knows when that was. But we did our masters together, and I enjoyed working with you then. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next, because you're not done yet.
I absolutely am not done yet. And one of the things that I did practice as chair of the Planning Commission, and I know you folks do it as well, but on nights when you're not super busy and you have young people in the audience, I would encourage you to invite them to come forward and share their ideas. By them receiving that invitation and being brave enough to come forward, you invite them into the public forum. And it's a way to engage them into becoming active public citizens. And they're going to be the ones that are taking care of all of us in the years to come. And taking care of this community. Anyway, that's my speech for tonight.
Do you remember when Lydia got us to get involved?
Oh, yes. Did she ever?
Did she ever? She came here one time after I'd got elected. I think you were on Planning and Zoning. And she smiled from ear to ear at what she'd created. now it's time for future generations to
It
come forward
is,
and
and
take
it's
over
our
for us.
responsibility to bring them along. And thank you to all of my friends from the Planning Commission that are here to me.
How many planners are here? I know there's a bunch of you here. Stand up if you would, please.
And my colleagues and friends.
Stand up so we can... There you go, Tony. You got a
Yes.
lot of them here.
I feel very blessed and thankful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
going to go home and let you go to work.
Next item of business is item 11B. It's AM 616-2010 Anchorage Community Development Authority Board of Directors appointment. Greg L. Jones. There's no motion pending. It was postponed.
Second.
In discussion from assembly members. Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, Madam Clerk, that item is approved by the body. Greg here?
No, Mr. He came last meeting, and was a little premature in coming, but I appreciate your support of his appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item is item 11C. It's AM 617-2010 Plating Board appointments.
Move to approve.
Brent Cole.
Second.
Amy J. McKenzie. Moved and seconded. In discussion from assembly members. Ask unanimous consent. Seeing no objection, those are approved. Are they here tonight, Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, are either one of them here?
I can't see everybody, so...
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next item is item 11D, AM 618-2010 Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Board of Directors appointment.
Move to
Timothy M.
approve.
Sullivan, Sr.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Ask unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Not seeing any. He is approved. Any relation, Mr. Mayor?
I think he's here.
He's here. I saw him earlier. Come on forward.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, Assembly, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you being here.
Well, it's an honor to serve on the boards and commissions that I serve.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Next item in front of us is item 11E. Notice of reconsideration was filed. This is AR 2010-333, appointing $800,000 of federal seized and forfeiture monies to the federal/state fine and forfeiture fund 257, used by the Anchorage Police Department. Approved on 11/23/2010. Notice of reconsideration was given by Mr. Starr on 11/24/2010. The question before the body is, shall we reconsider? Mr. Starr, sir.
Move to reconsider.
We already have.
Okay.
But any comments, sir?
I have a good solution, I believe.
Okay. Let me get the vote up. Mr. Honeman, do you have something before we vote to reconsider? I wouldn't suggest it.
No.
Thank you. Please vote. The motion is, shall we reconsider?
Ms. Osander?
The item is reconsidered unanimously. We have the item back in front of it. Mr. Starr.
Just yield to Mr. Honeman. I think I'd like to move a replacement item here.
Move,
It's laid on the table.
laid on the table item, trying to remember the,
Okay. It is item 11E, the same memorandum 600-210A, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $800,000 of federal seized and forfeiture monies.
so I move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, Mr. Honeman?
Yes, sir. Through the quick eye of Mr. Starr, is identified that previously the monies allocated under the forfeitures was to a architectural design that may have been addressed in a previous bond. And through some refresher looking through the administration, which of course the chief was not the chief at the time, and I had to do some research, and in fact there was some monies there that would have addressed that. And so now this supplemental addendum, if you will, would address the preparation for an academy, a police academy, of 28 officers in the fall quarter of 2011. So this would pay for items such as psychological testing services, ammunition costs that go into an academy of that size, as well as some of the recruitment, advertising costs, and background checks of these employees. So I recommend that we approve this.
Mr. Starr,
No, I concur. It starts to bring the speak in about an academy and the need for one in 2011. So this starts the appropriation of that money, and I'm pleased to do it. And I appreciate the resolve from this fellow assembly member and this body to get to that solution, and let's make it happen. Thank you.
Mr. Starr, thank you for catching that when it came through and reconsidering it. Sometimes reconsideration motions are helpful. Ms. Osiander, ma'am.
Just a clarifying question, doesn't it need an amendment to specify a dollar amount for that? Or are you saying the whole 800,000 would go for that?
Well, ma'am, the second page changes the numbers a little bit. If you'll look at the first line, it has a new accounting code specifically to accounting costs moving 380,000 of the 800 initial.
I'm sorry, I don't see that.
On page, the top of page 2, it's highlighted, and it's bolded, and it says academy costs in the account name and 380,000, and then the other two items are struck out what was previously adopted.
Cheryl Frasca, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's line 8 on page 2 for Ms. Osander.
Thank you, Ms. Frasca.
Ms. Osander, anything else, ma'am?
My version didn't have that, sir. I'm sorry.
It's all right, ma'am. Are you comfortable with it now?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
understand.
Any other comments from assembly members? If not, please vote. That item was approved 11-0. Thank you for catching that, because this will help us with our academy. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Paul.
That's what.
Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Next item in front of us is item 11F. It'll be item 11F and the S version. It'll be AO 2010-81S, amending Anchorage Municipal Code.
It's S1.
Anchorage Municipal Code and Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations to modify existing and to include additional fees, fines, and penalties, and to modify excise tax on motor vehicle registration and aircraft. Public hearing was closed. Mr. Finn moved to approve, second by Ms. Osiander. Motion to approve is on the floor.
Yes.
We need to get a motion to substitute and put the S1 version on.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
move to substitute S1 version for the S version.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, we have the S1 version in front of us. Mr. Flynn, sir?
Thank you,
Anything?
Mr. Chairman. I'll defer to Ms. Osiander. I believe she has some
Ms.
amendments.
Osiander, ma'am?
You should have in front of you 3 amendments. I'm looking for mine. Too much paper.
You need my copy, Ms. Osiander?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to move Amendment 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move amendment number 1. Ms. Osiander?
Specifically, this is a change for the inspection per hour fee for alterations, additions, change of use for plumbing, mechanical, and electrical upgrades. This came to my attention after discussion with a family that had to do a bathroom remodel when an elderly relative moved in. And I discovered that first there's the inspection of the plans. There's a fee for inspecting the plans. And then there's a initial inspection of the plumber, another one for mechanical, another for electrical, and then after it's built, there's 3 more that come in. And I placed a phone call to a licensed general contractor who does a lot of remodeling, and according to him, those inspections take maybe 5 to 10 minutes each. Outside of the building service area, those can all be done by one individual, so there's one inspection. But inside of the building service area, that's 3 separate inspections. And so I'm recommending a change that instead of a minimum hour charge for each one of those 6 inspections, it would be a minimum half-hour charge. And the second part of this amendment is fairly similar. It's for decks. when you come in with plans for a deck, they'll initially inspect the plans, but then they'll do another on-site inspections to make sure that the sonotubes are the correct depth, and another inspection after they've done that to make sure the framing is correct. And I did discuss this one with Mr. Weaver, and I understand, I hope is still true, that he is comfortable amending that to just $75 an inspection hour for the deck permit. That's Amendment 1.
Thank you. Has the administration looked at Amendment Number 1, and what's your position on it?
We have a clarification question.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Osiander, basically, the Amendment 1, my understanding was for decks only on page 25 and 26. If your intention is to place it someplace else, it's not on 25 and 26 and in that table, because that table at the bottom of 25 is for decks. So we would not support reducing the inspection fee to a half-hour minimum. But we would support the deck amendment to a $75 fee.
That's basically the same thing he told me on the phone, that the department did not support the first part of the amendment, but they did support the second part of the amendment.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it seems to me that $150 is pretty expensive per hour is pretty expensive for a 10-minute inspection, so I still advocate for the amendment.
Okay, the motion in front of us, brought forward by Ms. Osiander, has been stated. Is there any, Mr. Flynn, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the administration. Mr. Weaver, when you charge folks for these inspections, do you include travel time in the time estimate of the inspection?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Flynn, we do it. It does include travel time from one place to another.
Okay. And have you done any monitoring of what the average travel time plus inspection time is for inspections?
It can vary greatly, Mr. Flynn, depending on where the inspector is at one particular time and another. It really depends on their schedule that day and the degree of their travel, but it includes at least 15 minutes of travel time in each direction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Any other comments before we vote on the amendment?
I have one, sir. If there's any debate on this, I would move to split the amendment so that the part the administration does not disagree with still has some chance. So I don't know if anybody...
Doesn't seem to be any.
Okay, thank you.
Please vote on Ms. Osiander's amendment. That was passed.
Thank you. I'd like to move Amendment Number 2, if I could.
Second.
This is on page 32 of the S1 document. Basically, it clarifies that for a fill permit, excavation and fill permit, that if you're moving less than 10 cubic yards, there is no fee involved. And my rationale for that, that's a dump truck load, which is what I got when I put in my garden, and I think a lot of people do just a minimal amount of topsoil when they're doing just landscaping around their yard. And I don't believe the administration objects to this one.
Was there a second on that?
Yes.
Okay. Administration, your position on that amendment?
We concur.
Okay. Discussion from assembly members? Administration concurs. Is there any objection to this amendment? Not seeing any. That's been approved, Ms. Osiander.
Thank you. I'd like to move Amendment 3.
Second.
This is on page 47 of the document. I had some real concerns initially about the language and the charges relating to drainage and flood control, specifically because we're in the middle of what you might call a sea change in how the city has to respond to drainage. The sunset of a year, or the language in Section 53 that calls for this to come back to us in a year, reassured me on most of this. I do, though, want to draw your attention to the lines on page 47 that basically says all existing snow disposal sites have to come in compliance with these new standards. Even the public snow storage sites that we own aren't all in compliance now because a couple of them have been grandfathered. It's expensive to convert and bring everything up to standard. I found out today that 2 of them at least are in process of being brought up to standard. The other big change here, though, is private snow storage sites have not had to meet this new standard, and now they will. And I did discuss this with Ms. Bischofberger in Watershed Management, and she had no problem with giving a little bit of extra time for these snow storage sites to come into compliance. So the recommendation is on that second line that any site not in compliance with the manual shall have 3 years from the date of plan approval to modify the site instead of 2 years.
Administration, your position on that?
Concur.
Okay. Any other comments from assembly members? As unanimous consent, see no objection, that's approved. Debbie.
Thank you. And just one last thing. I think I've mentioned several times, we've talked about it in Title 21, these new drainage standards are potentially very, very expensive. And what we looked at in terms of private parking lots, it was astronomical in cost. So I think we've got to monitor this real closely, and I'm glad this is going to come back to us.
Good.
Thank you.
George, your light's on, sir.
We have a clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I'd like to have the municipal attorney make a clarification on the amendment before this last one, please.
Is that amendment number 2?
Amendment number 2.
I got unanimous on 3 already. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Yes, Dennis.
if you look at Table 3G, the paragraph, the amendment amends Section 1A, but it may be that the sponsor intended to amend 2A.
Okay, thank you.
If she amends 2A as proposed, it would leave a hole in the permit and fee structure for yardage between 10 and 50 cubic yards. So it may be that the sponsor wants there to be no fee for less than 10 and a fee of $70 for cubic yards between 11 and 50.
Debbie?
I do. That's a good catch. Thank you very much, Mr. Wheeler. And if necessary for the clerk, I can type that up, or if the intent's clear.
Repeat again what it is.
All right. It would be basically less than 10 yards, no charge, and then 10 to 50, $75. Is that correct, Mr. Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Osiander, I think you want 11 to 50?
I'm sorry, 11 to 50, yes. And it would be under 2A. I can
Chair?
type that out if that helps.
Yeah,
If you would, Debbie.
Okay.
be careful, if you have 10 and a half cubic yards, that falls through the cracks
That's okay.
in the deck.
Okay. Harriet, anything on Debbie's amendments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record,
Ma'am, sir, where you at?
the entire, sorry, this is, Mr. Attorney, the entire table structure does not account for the half yardages and percentages in between. So I'm sure the department will round appropriately, so I don't think we need the in-between language. We just need to stick with 10 and then 11 to 50.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we have to change the entire table.
Are those all your amendments, Debbie?
Yes, sir.
Harriet?
It's fine, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else have any amendments? Okay. We're going to bring it for voting. Item 11F, AO 2010-81S1 as amended. Please vote. And now we've got one more that hasn't voted. They're all in? Okay. The vote was 10-1. That was approved. Can't be unanimous, huh? Okay, wouldn't be any fun. We're now down to item 11G, ordinance AO 2010-72, and any 72S versions. This is adopting and appropriating funds for the 2011 general government operating budget for the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska. 3 public hearings were held, 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending. Mr. Starr, sir.
Move to approve 2010-72S.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Starr, sir. Who's the second? The second was Mr. Honeman.
I can't see my screen, but I wanted to also
tell by the voice.
bring to the body's attention, and not to start the night off in a confusing stance, there is a S version that was laid on our table tonight, and also one that was handed out at the work session. You can refer to the one in your, it was laid on the table, and it's, the end-all number is still the same. It's basically the appropriation between 2 departments that has had a little bit of tug-of-war. I'm not going to go into it, but...
Taking this one, Bill?
Yes, I am. No.
I got you.
Find one.
Okay. I'm going to refrain my comments for the approval. I mentioned at the work session, which we had on Friday, there's still some unresolved issues that we had not reached sort of a combined consensus either through committee or through a general amendment process. And so I leave the S version out as a motivation to get to where we need to be for tonight's movement. First off, obviously, we can't really go past tonight without a second a round of public hearings. Our charter restricts us from that. So the encouragement is we stay with it tonight to get through this important budget, and also remind the body that first quarter budget amendments can also take place to tweak anything we may have missed tonight. So again, I'll come back with just more summary comments on process, but encourage approval of the S version as it's in front of us now.
Okay, the S version's on the table. If you have amendments, please cue in.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Flynn.
I would move amendment number 1 in your packets, and just for the clarity of those who may not have it in front of them, this is for public transportation. It would restore the proposed reduction in operations and the associated fuel costs for peak hour, early morning and late runs, and Route 45G.
The total dollar amount?
Total dollar amount is $384,818.
Okay.
A portion of which comes from my office account.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
You should just write us a check for the whole thing.
Yeah, I wish. And, Mr. Chairman, I'll just speak real briefly.
Go ahead, sir.
We've had this discussion, but my concern here is each of these provide essential services for people trying to get to work, trying to get to their shopping, trying to get to their appointments in life. My concern is these reductions, if we allow them to go through, negatively impact not just taxpayers and individuals, but also the businesses that depend on these folks to do the work, and increase their personnel costs. They have to find new people because people can't get to work. I just think it's a good place to try and keep the budget in good shape. I would remind the body that we do not have the most robust public transportation system in our community, and I would hate to see it degrade further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Osiander, ma'am.
I would move to amend the amendment in front of us to insert instead the dollar figure $190,000. And
Is there a second?
if I could explain my rationale.
I'll second that for purposes of discussion.
Thank
Who's that,
you.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Madam Clerk, do you
Basically, what
Okay.
that would do would be to reinstate the early morning and late night on peak routes, but it would then not cover the 45G, the Mountain View run, because according to my conversation, there's some duplication there with the 40G, and I'm very cautious about the tax impact of doing the full amount of Mr. Flynn's amendment.
Thank you, ma'am. Elvie, on Ms. Osiander's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear from the administration on this amendment, because what is not going to be funded is a bus route in an area where people really need that service. So I'd like to hear what the administration has to say concerning Ms. Osiander's amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Administration, do you have any opinion? I know, I just want to make sure the mayors.
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, I'm Jody Cars, the Director of Public Transportation. The 45G was put in a number of years ago because we were having crowding issues on the 45. A full bus, a bus will carry 39 people with standees. About 10 people a day in the past may have been left behind. But it was really sporadic. You could never count on 10 people. Sometimes nobody would be left behind because of a full bus. Sometimes there would be up to 10. So that's why we put the 45G in. This was one of the areas that we proposed cutting because there is a trip 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after all those 45G trips. So, there's, I guess you can't gamble on, or we're gambling on not having any people being passed up.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Are you finished, Jody?
We had also proposed realigning a Route 8 to take it off 5th and 6th Avenues and putting them on 3rd Avenue to try and handle some of that crowding.
Right. Well, Jody, as you know, I rode the bus for 21 of the 29 years I lived in Anchorage, and I was left behind because I was late. Okay, I would hate to see anybody left behind, especially in the winter. And what it sounds to me is if, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, that you don't really know whether people are going to be left behind if we don't provide this additional route. And I'm not asking you to answer that question, but that's the feeling that I get. You really don't know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jody, which route serves the Glen Square Mall?
45G.
Okay. I know there was a big push a few years ago to add that particular facility to the route. Not a whole lot's really happened down there, and they don't seem to be all that enthusiastic about adding new businesses down there. Did you look at removing that from the route as a way to save money, and how much money would that really save?
We didn't look at it. It's maybe 7 minutes round trip to get down and back. So it's not that.
So not a whole lot. Not going to save a whole lot. All right.
No. Last year, we used to do the Glen Square Mall on the outbound and the inbound direction, and since there wasn't a lot of ridership, we already trimmed one direction off.
Okay. Thank you. That was the extent of my questions, Mr. Chairman. I don't support the amendment to the amendment. I've heard over the years that I've been involved with the Assembly, first as staff and now as an Assembly member, that there are, I've heard a lot of objections about empty buses, and people object to, why are we spending money on buses nobody's riding? This is one of our biggest routes. We added this route because it was overcrowded. So to cut this route in particular doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I don't support the Ms. Osiander's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Ms. Osander, I've got you still here. Is it on your amendment, ma'am?
No, I just wanted to ask Jody a question, if I could.
Jody?
Jody,
okay. Sorry.
When I talked to you now a couple times over the last few weeks, and one of the things you gave me was the cost and then the cost less revenue. I have to tell you, I was really tempted to use the cost less revenue of 173. Would that work, or do you want the 190?
I'm sorry to plead ignorance. Sometimes I'm not really sure about I think we need the 190 because there's a cost budget and a revenue budget.
I think she got her answer, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Drummond, on the
Chair.
substitute amendment?
Yes, Ms. Cars, please don't go away.
Until they vote on it, stay there, please.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here tonight. I appreciate it. You said the bus carries 39 people, a standard bus. Is that seats only?
Seats only.
How many can stand?
This kind of the standard is a full bus is 150% of seated capacity, so it's roughly 60. However, it will shove people in until
And even when there are as many as 16 to 20 people standing, people did get left behind.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Ms. Johnston?
Yes, Jody. Do you know the ridership that would come with Ms. Osiander's amendment? Or do you have a guesstimate as far as the ridership on those buses, the early morning and the late?
I do. Can I have a minute and get
Yeah.
back with you?
Yes, thank you.
Let me go get my file.
I'm going to do it at 6:25. I want to get done with this particular amendment before we get into the person to be heard.
I was going to say.
I know.
Sorry. Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, the one service level that would eliminate early morning and late evening service is about 19,000 annual passenger trips. The peak hour trips are about 9,000 annual passenger trips. And I think those were the two.
Is that all, Ms. Johnson?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Pat, on the amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate Ms. Osiander's concern and certainly respect it. I just note, this is the bus ridingest, nothing for you, Jody, sorry. This is the bus ridingest area of town. The utilization is higher than any other part of the city, and frankly, if these folks were using the bus just for the fun of it, maybe I would be more open to the amendment. But these people are using the bus because they have to. They have no other option. And so I can't support reducing their service further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other discussion. I don't see anybody lit up, so let's do the vote. This is a vote. Ms. Osiander brought it forward to amend number one, Mr. Flynn's $384,818 to $190,000. Please vote. That motion fails. We're now back on amendment number one that's submitted. It's Mr. Flynn's. It's $384,818. Mr. Flynn, anything?
I introduced it. You heard my words.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
Any comments from assembly members before they bring the voting up? Okay. Please vote. Motion fails. We're now on to amendment number two in your packet. This is from Assembly members Drummond and Gray Jackson.
Are they going to move it?
Are you going to move number two? I'm just asking you, you're going to move it?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. No.
Thank you. Amendment number three, Mr. Flynn, are you going to move that one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll move amendment number 3.
Second.
The amount is $297,400. Mr. Flynn?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to explain this, there are two components to the Sampson Diamond Library branch. One is the operating funds, the other is the lease costs. This amendment restores the operating funds, but not the lease costs. And as you can read in here, the intent is to seek either a smaller space with less operational cost to maintain some sort of library service for the south side of our community, or seek some sort of consideration from the owners of the current space for reduced lease costs. If that proves impossible during the first quarter, it would be my intent to remove this funding at that time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson? You're in the queue. Okay. Sorry, Obie. Jennifer?
Yes, through the administration, what is the current status as far as our negotiations with the Diamond Mall?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Johnson, we've been in discussion, but so far there really has been no movement on our concept of moving to, an express library or a computer-based library. So at this stage, I have to say that there is no progress.
Thank you. Should I speak to the...
Johnston.
Yes. This one's a hard one for me because it's my constituents in my district. And I'm concerned about closing another library, but I'm also concerned, I saw in, I'm not sure what paper this week, an editorial cartoon that had Mac imprinted on the face of the library. And as I've had many email conversations and with various people, my concern is what is a library going to look like? And what would a Library Express look like in South Anchorage? I don't know if any of us really have an idea right now, but I would like to, I will not be supporting this amendment, but I would like to commit to the Library Foundation and to the administration to work with them to come up with some answer for South Anchorage. I'm not sure what it's going to be. I'm not sure if it's going to be a internet incubator for South Anchorage. I don't know if it'll be a Library Express. I don't know if it will be a children's library. But I would like to readdress this at first quarter budget revision if we have some ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Honeman?
Yes. This was another one that's, though it's not in my particular district, libraries affect the entire city in a positive way. And in fact, I read with interest one of the informationals that I received, and I tried to find the original author, but two cities were competing for a private company to come in to bring new jobs, growth, bring their company and their employees in to the community, and lo and behold, as it turns out, the deciding point, the tipping point between two very competitive cities was its library system, and some visits that the company brought to that city, and they did it in a clandestine manner. They didn't want people to know that's where they were going to their communities to mine the feel of the community, how much involved they are in the education system and the library system. So. Frankly, I've heard comments that, maybe perhaps the Diamond Sampson Library, because it's in the Diamond Mall, has become maybe a dumping ground for children, maybe perhaps a daycare. And coming from the public safety standpoint, my background, I can tell you that if they're not in the library, reading, talking, and activities, or looking on the Internet, researching, I can tell you where they possibly could be is in our neighborhoods and creating trouble and perhaps getting into trouble or being recruited into gangs and the like. So I'd much rather them be at a library if that's what it came to be. And I think this is a wise amendment, and I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question concerning the lease because I've heard a lot of different stories. I heard that the owner was going to donate the lease space. I heard that the owner had no interest in leasing anymore to the municipality. So I'd like some answers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Birch, sir?
Yes, my understanding that the city library group was interested in reducing the square footage from 13,000 square feet to an express library model of about 3,000 square feet, and that there was resistance, pushback, and a refusal on the part of the landlord to accept that. And as a consequence, I think it just speaks to the need for, we have a library in South Anchorage, way south in Girdwood. We have a new standalone facility in Mountain View. I think what we need to do is pull back, and we've talked about a first quarter budget review here. But the real problem with this amendment is that it proposes an increase in property taxes. If we are to identify an alternative fund source or a reduction somewhere else in the budget, that'd be fine. But as proposed, I cannot accept and will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I've talked to the owners of this, and I've been told, too, that they're offering 2 years of free rent for that space. Has there been any headway at all in maintaining this library from the administration, Mr. Mayor?
As I mentioned before, sir, no.
Okay. Elby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flynn, sir?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just wrap up unless there's any comments after me. But I'm glad Ms. Johnson raised the issue of the Library Foundation and private funds. Part of the reason for bringing this amendment was that we have a very active Library Foundation. They're doing a great job of improving our existing libraries and seeking opportunities like the new Mountain View branch. We'll talk about that more in a minute here. Their effectiveness at attracting that private investment is compromised when potential donors see that we're not standing behind our existing library system. And I'm really concerned that if we allow this branch to close, we'll harm our chances to improve our other branches because we won't be able to attract those private dollars that we'd like to see, those other fund sources that Mr. Birch referenced. So I'm a little concerned that not approving this amendment is the proverbial penny wise and pound foolish. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Mr. Gutierrez, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I'm not sure I heard the answer from the administration. There has been no offer from the landlord of any kind on reduced rent, free rent, any kind of a break? Is that what you're telling us?
The landlord wanted a full library in there or nothing. And as you know, Mr. Gutierrez, with the budget challenges we have, every department had to look for savings. And this is one of the library's suggestions for savings was either going to an express model or closing this branch. And so that's the status.
I appreciate that, but that wasn't the question I asked. I know we don't want the full library. Had they offered us anything? I know they just want a full library, but did they offer us anything?
For a full library, yes, we'd have lease commitment from them, lower lease or free lease.
A free lease for what term?
I don't know what term, but again, I mean, the operating costs of the full library weren't what we were proposing, and so we couldn't come to a meeting of the minds.
Does anyone in the administration know what the term of that would have been?
Tammy can maybe tell us. She's, oh, where's Larry? Tammy's coming up.
Welcome to the speaker, Mr. Baker.
Well, somebody's coming.
Hi, I'm Tammy Oswald with the Real Estate Service Department, and through the chair, I believe it was 2 years of free rent, but it was only for a full library.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I finally managed to get an answer on that question.
Mr. Honeman, I want to bring this up for a vote, sir.
Yes, sir. If that was one quick question to Mr. Flynn, the amendment that's here proposed 297-400, with the free lease for 2 years, this would get us a 1 year of operating costs? Is that the dollar amount you have?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Before we vote, I just want to remind the body that we are the legislative branch of government, not the executive, so sometimes what we'd like, it's not within our purview to do it. Please vote. This is on the amendment. That was defeated 6-5. Mr. Flynn, sir, and then we'll go back to the amendments.
Thank you, Mr.
We need to bring up the individual here appearance request.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, move to change the order today to take up item 12A at this time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ask unanimous. See no objection. We now have in front of us an appearance request, Ron Chandler, regarding lack of affordable housing. If you're here, sir, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Chandler? He's not here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd also like to change the order today one further time and take up item 14A at this time.
Second.
Ask unanimous. We're going to change the order of the day. We're going to take up new public hearings. Can begin no earlier than 6, no later than 11. Anyway, we're just going to deal with this one. Resolution AR 2010-313. Is there any objection to the body? Seeing none, we're going to bring this up. Public hearing is now open on Resolution AR 2010-313, resolution of the Municipal Assembly to honor Mr. B.J. Barney Gottstein at the Mountain View branch of the Anchorage Library by naming the children's area as the Gottstein Family Children's Center. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward.
Sorry, I keep that.
Arliss, we're a pleasure to have you here. I don't care how you have to get down here.
I'll hobble as fast as I can.
However you wish, ma'am. We can bring the speaker to you.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, my name is Arliss Sturgeon-Lusky, and just very briefly,
the mayor appointed a naming panel to consider this very generous gift of $320,300 by the lifelong resident Barney Gottstein. It was to the Mountain View Library. I was pleased to serve on that naming committee. We had a meeting. There was a public hearing held on our recommendation. Mr. Gottstein has been a very early supporter of the Anchorage Library Renewal initiative. His gift was extraordinarily important. It does not make up for municipal funding. We're very lucky in this community to have people like Mr. Gottstein, but the Friends of the Library Foundation, that are trying to keep and develop our libraries. The citizen naming panel recommended that the new children's area in the Mountain View Library be named for the Gottstein family, calling it the Gottstein Family Children's Center. I don't know how many of you were there the night of the opening, and the kids in that area were just thrilled and excited. It was a wonderful evening, so I think we all hopefully will unanimously agree with this, but also thank the Gottstein family for their very generous gift. At least we have that library. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Assembly members?
I like libraries.
No one's going to question that, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify on the issue should please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no in public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved in second. Discussion from Assembly members? If not, please vote. That was approved unanimously. What? Mr. Mayor, did you have anything in conjunction with this?
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to, I know David Gottstein is here, and I thought his brother Robert was here earlier as well. Would you like to come to the podium, sir? And
would you like to come to the podium?
Yep. And allow us to bestow more accolades on the great service that your father has committed to this community. And on behalf of the administration, really just thank you. It's an honor to see somebody give back to the community as much as your family has, and it's very humbling and very grateful. Thank you.
Well, we're happy for the opportunity. Of course, our children are our best investment, and we're at least happy to be involved in an important library on the north side of town, and hopefully something can be made available long-term for those people in the southern end of town as well. So thank you. It's an honor to have our name associated with such an important project.
We have a couple more people, if you would, sir. Mr. Honeman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gottstein. I echo the mayor's thanks and congratulations to the honor for the family. It's well-deserved. And again, as someone closer to my end of town and where I lived in Mountain View, I remember the library when it was there open before it became then Parks and Recreation, and actually it's a very good building, and I'm really tickled pink to see the library back open and the Children's Center to be named after the Gottstein family. Thank you.
Thank your family so much for all they've done for this town, sir.
Well,
Appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Now going back to where we were, we're now back to AO 2010-72S. We're now on amendment number 4.
Move amendment number 4, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the funding for the East Side Plan that, well, others had been fighting for it long before I came, and I'm beginning to feel like others will be fighting for it long after I'm dead and gone. We've had 2 previous mayors, one of whom kind of snatched this money for his own district a couple of years ago. This is something that I think is of great import to the East Side. It's not a huge amount of money, but it could have a big impact. As those of you, many of you are aware, East Anchorage is the area slated for the greatest growth in population density as far as the 2020 plan goes, and that's why that plan was not ratified by some of the folks on the east side of town. They don't particularly care for that. But if it's going to happen, if it's going to be a reality, we have to plan for it, and we're woefully behind in that effort. We've seen a lot of great planning efforts happening around this city on the part of other neighborhoods, and I think those plans are going to serve those areas quite well. The community is moving forward on this, with or without the city. The city has dragged its feet for far too many years, and through the auspices of the Community Council, a group has been formed and has started down this planning process and down this road, using some of the recent efforts, particularly on the hillside, as a sort of a guide or a template. The city's going to get left behind eventually, Mr. Chairman. This is going to happen with or without the municipality. I would prefer it to happen with the city, and sooner rather than later. I know there's always a possibility at first quarter, but I think this is something that is important enough, and the community has gelled enough around this issue that it's time for us to try to move forward. Thank you, sir.
Had you given any thought to requesting a state grant?
We already have a state grant equivalent to this amount. This amount would sort of be the city covering the other half.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, I just echo Mr. Gutierrez's comments and have been at least one of the meetings. I was out of state for the follow-up one recently, and they're a very vocal group, particularly that northeast section. Ms. Osiander, Mr. Starr, also, at least at this time, represent that segment as well. And they're really moving on getting community stakeholders, Cook Inlet Housing, maybe moving in as more of a facilitator, mediator to get the process and keep it on track and on task, as well as other commercial and private, public, and governmental and non-governmental entities. So I'd support the amendment and ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Ms. Osiander, ma'am?
I agree with the intent, but I think that there are some burdens that haven't really been articulated with moving forward with the amendment as proposed. East Anchorage does have big needs. There's a lot of density and there's a lot of growth that occurred fairly haphazardly, in my opinion. I absolutely, though, am aware of the workload that's already in place for the planning department. I feel like I weekly visit the planning department, and they frankly don't have enough staff to keep up with the jobs that are already in front of them. I will advocate and help pushing for a state grant. That's specifically what occurred in Chugiak Eagle River. We got a state grant to work forward with a separate chapter in Title 21, and I think that, Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right on with what should be done here. It's not realistic to expect less people to do more and more in planning, and so frankly I can't support this, though I do support the intent.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions from Assembly members or comments? Please vote. That was approved.
No, it wasn't. Dick, what was?
Now, amendment number 5 was in the S version. We don't need to deal with that. Amendment number 6, I think, was in the S version. Mr. Starr, was 6 in the amendment?
It's a duplicate amendment, so 7 covers it.
Okay, 7 covers it. We don't need 6 then. Number 8.
Likewise, number 9 covers 8.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's the numbers are not correct. 7 is included in the S version. 8 is a duplicate.
Okay. Number 9 was for Ms. Gray Jackson, and that was covered by the mayor's grants.
And
ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make it clear to the folks in the audience and folks who are watching on TV that that was my amendment for $20,000 for project access, and it seems to be included in the mayor's grant budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Number 10, which was included in the S version, is the money for the anchor rides. Number 11 was in the S version. This is the money for the Boys and Girls Club put into the grants.
Actually, in the Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. Number 12 was Mr. Flynn. This was the money for the arts that's in the S version, sir. Number 13 was in the S version. Federation money. Number 14. Mr. Honeman, sir, number 14.
I won't move this amendment this time based on tonight's action with the earlier commitment from the administration. The chief, have conversations with him, and this body, I will not move that amendment this time. We'll wait for first quarter budget revisions.
Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson. That's all that we've got on the printed amendments.
Mr. Chairman?
Ma'am?
Right. I have an amendment here that's in the packet. It's not numbered, but I'd like to move it to increase public transit by $40,000. And this amendment is to provide for free rides 1 day a week for our veterans in this community. And, you know, I got the idea because I found out that our seniors get to ride the bus for free every Wednesday, and I thought, well, you know what? I think it would be a really wonderful gesture to show our veterans just how much we appreciate their service.
Did we get a second on that, ma'am?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Elby.
Their service to this country and what they do in our community. And a lot of them have doctor's appointments to go to, whatever it may be. And I just thought that this was a small way to say thank you to our veterans right along with our seniors. My dollar amount here, I know that it's probably not right, and it says right here, estimate. So I would like to ask the administration if they could give us a better number before we vote on this amendment, before I continue my comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Administration? Do you want us to take a dinner break while you can work on that? Why don't we take our dinner break? We'll be back in about 20 minutes. And then this is where we'll pick back up at.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't talked to anybody from the administration. I was talking to the folks in the audience, but if the administration can give me a better dollar amount, I'd be really, really happy before we vote on this.
Through the chair, Ms. Gray Jackson, it's a really hard number for us to be able to figure out. Really, it's a matter of lost revenue versus cost. There are seats that are open on the buses. It doesn't cost any more to put another person on that seat. It's hard for us to guess how many people might be riding as far as lost revenue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carr. So in other words, there are some empty seats, and it may not cost us anything.
That's a possibility, yes.
Thank you. I hope my colleagues are listening to that. Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Thank you. Other questions from the Assembly members on Ms. Gray Jackson's amendment? Mr. Honeman, and then Elby. Mr. Honeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a question, but a comment. As a veteran of the United States Army and a military brat, given the latest information that it's open seats and potentially there could be lost revenue potentially, but it might encourage some veterans who have never ridden the People Mover an opportunity to do so. And we do it for the seniors in hopes that they'll find the People Mover an adequate ride, and I'd like to see this happen if it's. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, please vote. Ms. Drummond? It's not going to significantly change it. But Harriet, if you'd like to vote, ma'am, this is on the $40,000 amendment by Ms. Gray Jackson.
It's amended to zero.
That item was not approved. Is there any other amendment from Assembly members? Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The spirit of half a loaf is better than none at all. I'd like to offer a slightly different version of the public transportation amendment, and then I'll be done.
Which number are you on?
Well, you can look at number 1 but as a reference point, but I'll explain it very carefully just so everyone's clear. The approximately $380,000 are made up of 3 components. The early morning and late evening service at $190,000, peak service at $60,000, and Route 45G at $130,000. Those are rounded figures.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer this amendment to public transportation in the amount of $250,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
And as a fund source, I'll kick in $4,000 from my office account, which leaves a balance of $246 in taxation.
What would that do?
You only get up through April, sir.
So that's only $3,000? All right, I'll kick in 3. And if I get reelected, I'll kick in another $1,000 at first quarter budget revisions. How's that? So we'll get 147.
I'm sorry.
247 and 3 is our fund source.
Ms. Osiander, ma'am?
Could you tell us what you're envisioning this would put back?
This puts back the early morning and late evening service and the peak hour service. Those 2 components are 190 for the early and late and 60 for the peak.
The final one was 347.3.
So 247.3.
247.3, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, Ms. Osiander? Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Horniman?
In the spirit of good faith, I'll put $1,000 from my account for next year. I anticipate not having one assistant for a little bit.
Okay. Any other comments? Please vote. Is everybody where they want to be? Bring it forward. That item was approved, let's see. That was approved 6-5 by the body. Anything else by assembly? Any other amendments? Saying none, we're now going to vote on 2010-72S as amended. Mr. Starr, sir.
I just have a few general comments, and it really is, as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, perhaps a little bit opportune to summarize what's in the S version. I don't want to take a lot of time because I know that there was a lot of diligence by this body and a lot being 2 words because there was diligence this year. I will say that we addressed a dialogue that's a fruitful and progressive dialogue as it relates to the police academy through this and through previous action tonight. To me, that's a success. We prioritized our fire stations and put money back into the fire department budget in this S version. We funded the anchor rides and then apparently added some more transit priorities in it as an amendment to just move now. But you saw a dialogue that speaks to Parks and Rec Restoral for Boys and Girls Club that went in there at the amount requested from their perspective. Ms. Gray Jackson dialogue with the Project Access folks, Covenant House, and several others to encourage them to apply for the grant program that the mayor has, and we expanded the grant program. We also moved the grant program from the municipal manager's office to the mayor's office for a couple reasons. Mine is accountability to basically the leader of the city that I can go to and say, Mayor, what's your priority when these grants come to be? It also tells the users that may want to apply for these grants the procedure is clear. It's board-driven. I know the folks that are making up the membership of the board, so I'm real happy to see less earmarks this year is where we go, as well as it's very difficult to have an earmark request for a district-specific item. And as an assembly member, I know you can get in a tug-of-war over those dollars from one district to another. The FCC served as a council president myself. I think that's an appropriate priority to see that. What we also have done, and we're real close, the S version stood alone, and why that was a number that was important to me is that it allowed us to reduce the burden on the property taxpayers of the community. The S version stands now at slightly over the 1% mandated by voter debt service and bond approvals from last year. So Basically, over the mayor's initial proposal, we've continued to pull property tax burdens down through this S version, and to me, that's real important. I have just 3 points to make, and one of them, of course, is the thanks to this body, and particularly the chairman, for allowing me the latitude to speak freely, to organize through work sessions and through committee debates and discussions where we got to tonight. And it ultimately, you have to agree. You may go forward to agree to disagree, but the point is we know our marching papers now. And I was real happy with the depth of the discussion. I think we all saw a compliment today, although I heard it, and it came directly from our CFO. None of us on this body are CFOs, and none of us are certified accountants. But our CFO said that she was very impressed with the depth of the discovery to this budget. And to me, it wasn't just the general sense, but there was a time when I felt sometimes I was the only one digging into the weeds. And when she made that compliment to me today, I took it as such, and I really want to pass that through to this body, that you did diligence, and I'm happy to see it. Is it perfect? No. The mayor, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the dialogue. I saw and took oftentimes liberties to go into your offices and others unannounced and rude perhaps, and you guys had the spirit to drop everything. I saw the BAC schedule appointments unfettered through what we asked them to do, and they got departmental speak that I had feedback was very clear. So thank you to you and your staff. I thought it was very, very well done. We saw an S version draft as early as last week, Wednesday. Solid numbers Thursday, and of course the work session on Friday was well done. The last one is not kudos necessarily, but a note of caution. One other item coming up tonight will be the fiscal plan, the outlook, and the outreach. And we can already hear this body talking about 2012 because that budget has some really big challenges for us. We were able to move through additional appropriations of additional revenue and good candid speak with our community over what the priorities were, but we have a disconnect between our labor costs and our ability to keep up with them. And that's not an opinion of my perspective, but it speaks clearly to the documents that we study and that I study as chair of this finance committee, that they kind of scare me. I'm not sure we're going to be able to continue to hold those property tax burdens down. We didn't produce a reduction in our spending plan this year. We held it down. We didn't reduce property taxes. We held them down. There needs to be, and I'm not pontificating, but we need to have a discussion, a candid one, about diverse revenues and also about areas that we cannot consider a government service anymore. Those dialogues will need to continue to happen. So I'll wipe my brow of the hard work and the stress that went into that, and kudos to the body for helping me get here. But I wipe it only short term because first quarter budgets are right around the corner, and 2012 is also. So thanks for your time and appreciate that. Urge approval of the S version as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Honeman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't need to make as long of comments as Mr. Starr, but as the chair of the Budget Committee on the Assembly, I thought he did a wonderful job of keeping us moving and moving us towards schedule and keeping us on schedule. So thank you, Mr. Starr, for that. Being my first time in the budget building process from the legislative body, I found it to be very interesting. I went to all the community dialogues, viewpoint learning. I went to one of the school districts. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to all three of them this year due to some conflicts in my schedule, but it was a very interesting process. I read commentary as much as I could get. I actually went to my community councils and every group I could get to, and I did much like Mr. Hall, and I used that as a mini version and gave out the survey that was that the administration put out on the website to the mayor's page, and as well as was sent into the mailings throughout the city's billing process. And I learned that and listened, and hopefully that we would be a good represented body of our public, which is what we're supposed to be. And I do remember loud and clear how it stood at most people, super majority, about 67% of the people in the city that responded to those dialogues. I'm recognizing not everybody, but a good represented group of this city wanted to keep our services intact. And to that extent, I don't know that this budget exactly gets us there. I'm disappointed in a lot of areas, there's no doubt. But I also recognize that we're a body of 11. We have to pass this budget. It's our diligence that we have to do. It's by charter. It's not by accident. It's by design. And I support the S budget as amended, and I hope and pray that we will be able to review with a serious eye in addressing some service needs by first quarter budget revision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gray Jackson, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start out by thanking my colleagues' participation and having informal meetings and getting together and talking about things that we wanted to see reinstated in this budget. Secondly, I'd like to thank our budget chair for his leadership and the fine job that he did working with us through getting to where we are right now. And no, we didn't get everything that we thought should be reinstated, but we do have, it's a really good start. I'd also like to thank the Budget Advisory Commission for their diligent work and for providing us with a very, very excellent report and working with our departments. I'd like to especially thank OMB because I asked a lot of questions and I asked for a lot of information throughout the process, and they got me that information and in a timely manner. Thank you very much. And lastly, I want to thank our chair for running some really great meetings and, you know, even still dealing with a large budget like we have been, we've still kind of been getting out of here reasonable. Unlike in the past, you know, we used to be here to midnight during budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've stopped the clock, ma'am. Mr. Burt, sir.
I just want to echo some of the earlier sentiments. My greatest disappointment in this budget is the fact that we haven't seen more concessions out of the largest single component in our budget, and that's our labor. I think the mayor made a good faith effort for a wage freeze. We're seeing that at a national level on fixing wages for 2 years, as I understand the president's initiated. People on Social Security have had a fixed income basically for the last 2 years, and yet the largest single component of increase that we've had to accommodate has been in built-in structural increases in our labor costs. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to address those in the year ahead, and we'll see more good faith interest in addressing those challenges, because we simply can't absorb those increases on a year-over-year basis. That said, I'm happy that we were able to find in the budget the means to restore the fire engine and the fire equipment in South Anchorage, the area that Ms. Johnston and I represent, and look forward to a favorable completion of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hall, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been an interesting process for me, my first budget, and it has been an honor to work with the 10 individuals here at this table. I've seen a totally different process in the past, and this one has been absolutely incredible. A lot of that is due to Mr. Starr's leadership. I think he's done a great job of pulling us all together, listening to everybody, and trying to accommodate as much as possible. I'd close with a comment. Are we overtaxed in this community? Absolutely not. But do we have people that are struggling to get by in the current economy? Absolutely. And the last thing that I want to see happen is our economy to begin to do what we're seeing happening in a lot of communities in the lower 48, where people can't make their taxes and losing homes and going through some extremely difficult times. So I'm very pleased with the test version, and I definitely will be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to beat some dead horses, but again, there are a lot of things that are due, and I think it bears saying. Mr. Starr, you ran a good process, and I think, you know, we're not still embroiled in a lot of issues tonight because that process was good. That makes a huge difference. Preparation ahead of time makes things happen so much more smoothly at these meetings. And, you know, while I'm not entirely happy with this budget, I think, you know, the age-old saying is politics is the art of compromise. I think we have some good compromises here. There are some things that I'm still disappointed in. I think that you know, while we are trying to hold down the budget, I think we're holding it down in the wrong places and putting that burden on the wrong people, particularly with transit, you know, some of the people who can least afford to bear the burden. But I understand trying to trim that burden overall. I think, Mr. Hall, not to embarrass you or call you out, but I think a lot of thanks is due to you too. You did a lot of great communication and shuttle diplomacy, and you're like the trickle of water that digs a Grand Canyon eventually. You have a calm and steady voice, and I appreciate that. I don't always agree with you, but I appreciate your approach. And your approach is welcome on this body. Again, I don't think that this is a perfect budget. I'm not sure there is any such thing as a perfect budget. When you have a city this size, everybody, sooner or later, your ox is going to get gored somewhere. But I think it does bear mentioning again cautions toward 2012. One of the things this budget will do, and every one of us up here, all 11 of us and the mayor understand that one of the things this budget will do is exacerbate any potential budget deficit we face in 2012, and will necessitate deeper cuts in services. In fact, what we're getting tonight is we're paying a little bit more for the services we get, and we're getting less services for it. And as a result, we're going to have even more of that in the next budget cycle. And while it is concerning that these are difficult economic times, and we certainly don't want anyone to be, taxed out of their home by any means, I think we also need to make sure that we're able to maintain the level of services that make this a first-class city and make this the kind of place that people want to live, want to relocate to, want to bring their business here and their employees here. I think that is going to be key to our future, is growth. We can't remain where we are. We have to grow in some aspect. So I am concerned about that in the future. But all of that said, I think that this particular budget reflects some very good compromises. I think people on this body were willing to compromise. I don't think anybody up here got everything they wanted or didn't want in the budget, but I think everybody worked together to get something that was adequate and will do a good job for our city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
Ms. Ostrander, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you, Mr. Starr.
Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, I just want to thank Mr. Starr for taking this assignment on. He did a great job. I've served with a lot of Assembly members, and I think this is just a good budget. It's not a perfect budget, but I've never seen a perfect one across this body in all the years I've been on it. We do the best we can with the dollars we have. So you did a great job. Thank you, Bill, for your effort. Mr. Sullivan, Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I want to thank the Assembly for all the hard work, particularly Chairman Traney and Budget Chair Starr. You guys really put together a fairly seamless process this year, and greatly appreciated. And for those who sounded the cautionary note about next year, it's absolutely true. As we look forward, we're anticipating double-digit deficits in the next years ahead. In 2012, between $12 and $15 million alone, and so things that were restored today are back in consideration tomorrow. But in the meantime, it's going to be our commitment that we're going to look at every single way possible to operate government more efficiently, and literally leaving no stone unturned and looking at ways to manage government and deliver services better. And sometimes that takes a while to implement and to see the results of, but we're already seeing some great gains in how we're using technology and some of the systems that we're updating, and we will continue that, and that's our commitment. It was ironic today as we honored the Gottstein family for the Mountain View Library as we're reducing funding in another area of town for libraries. But that's an area where we have to start thinking more creatively as well. We've heard on numerous occasions our dear friend Billy Ray Powers come to the microphone and talk about there's 93 libraries in town, one in virtually every neighborhood, and they're called schools. And it used to be that we used our schools for the community school programs at night after school was closed, and they were very active centers of learning and instruction. And there's got to be a way that at least some schools, whether they're middle schools, or high schools, which are geographically located, with the computers they have and with the resources they have, there's got to be a way, without building new libraries or opening new libraries, to use the resources we already have. And that's the kind of thing we need to be looking at, because again, every kid in this town has access to a library 5 days a week, every single kid that goes to school. So, and again, in our LUSAC library and our other libraries, there is the intermixing of adults and kids all the time, with library supervision, and I don't see why we can't do it in existing facilities in the district. So something that we certainly need to consider. And just finally, to Mr. Gutierrez, I appreciate your comment. We are paying a little bit more. We are getting less service, but the primary reason is the cost of those services is increasing so dramatically, not just last year, not just this year, but next year and the year after and the year after. And because of that, we're forced year after year to make these tough decisions unless something changes. So with that, I also want to thank, as Ms. Gray Jackson mentioned, the Budget Advisory Commission. They did yeoman's work this year, the best I've ever seen, and we will try and keep them empowered to be an active part. And I want to thank the public who came out and testified. In my 9 years on the Assembly, we never had 200 people come testify on a budget, and it was really a nice mix of comments between folks who realized that in tough economic times, raising taxes is not the best option, and those who advocated for the services that they appreciate in this community. So, again, to the public, thank you for your participation. It was the best I've seen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please vote. We're there. There, that was approved unanimously. Mr. Starr, I ask you to make a motion.
Yes, sir, and I'll just explain to the public what that means. Is we are up against the deadline to approve this budget with no more public hearings. Not that you didn't have your chance to speak, but when I move notice of immediate reconsideration, it allows us to not face tomorrow with somebody wanting to bring these back to the table through some means. So I will move to immediate reconsideration, and I urge a no vote.
Mr. Birch. Okay. Please vote. No votes urged. Vote was 11-0. That item will not be reconsidered by this body. We're now down to, and thank everybody's help for getting this budget approved. We're now down on the agenda to item 11H, AO 2010-77, adopting the 2011 General Government Capital Improvement Budget. 3 public hearings were held on 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending. Mr. Starr, sir?
Move to approve the S version.
Second.
Mr. Starr, sir? Any comments?
No, I'll leave you to handle the amendments. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you want to move them en masse or how you want to move them. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Ms. Gray Jackson? Let's get the S version up. H.
Mr. Chairman,
Ma'am?
I just need a little bit of clarification,
I don't
okay?
have an S version.
So we have before us 2010-77S, and looking through this document, it includes the amendments. Am I correct?
What did I do with it?
Let me find my copy, Elvie.
It looks like it includes all of the amendments brought forward by each and every one of us. And if that is the case, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cheryl, does that include the amendment, all the amendments brought forward by the body?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am.
And they're all listed on the attachment to the S version. Those are the amendments that are reflected in the numbers in the S version.
And that's the same sheet, sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's the same
Go ahead.
sheet we saw at the work session on Friday, is that correct?
It's similar. It's been adjusted based on the changes that were made.
Got it, thank you. Mr. Chairman, all these amendments were reviewed at the work session on Friday, so if there's more
Could
to add.
somebody queue in to move it and to second it? I don't see one on the... There, thank you. We've got it in front of us. So this includes all the amendments that we saw on Friday, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gray Jackson, anything else?
I'll say it again. Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you very much. Ms. Osiander? Your microphone wasn't on, ma'am.
Sorry, I just wanted to reinforce that was my understanding, too. They're all there, and I want to really thank Ms. Frasca. She did a super job on this one.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston?
Oh, things are going too nicely. There was just one, there was a little communication problem between myself and the wonderful Ms. Frasca. And I just would like to make one amendment to this sheet. It's a Girdwood Industrial Park. and actually I wanted to lower that to 1.5 million as opposed to 4.6 million. And if I could have a second, it would be great.
Second.
Moved and seconded. What line is that on?
Line 17,
You want to drop it down to what?
1.5 million.
Is there any input from the administration on that?
No, that's just fine, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Comments from Assembly members? Mr. Starr, sir? Is there any objection to that? Seeing none, you've got that done, Ms. Johnson. Any other comments from Assembly members on the document in front of us? Okay. As soon as the screen comes up, please vote. When the screen works. I know. It's on strike. That was approved unanimously, Mr. Starr. I need a motion on that, too.
Move immediate reconsideration.
Second.
Urge a no vote.
Mr. Starr moved that, and Mr. Honeman seconded it. Please use your buttons.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
As soon as it comes up.
Okay. Please vote. No. There you go. That item will not be reconsidered. Was that a tactical punching error? Okay.
Urge a no vote means urge a no vote.
I thought maybe it was that end of the table down there.
I'm not breathing that same air. I'm a little upwind of that.
Okay, next item in front of us is item 14, item 11I. It's AR 2010-293, approving the 2011-2016 General Government Capital Improvement Program. Three public hearings were held, 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Starr, sir.
Is there an S version? Okay. Move to approve. Mr. Starr, the S version?
There is no, is there an S on this one? There is no S.
Didn't see an S on this one.
No.
Yes, there is.
Being told by Ms. Raska there is.
I really
Let's see if we can get a copy of it.
293S, Ms. Frasca?
Yes.
Oh, here it is.
You got a copy over there?
I've got it here.
Didn't see it.
Oh, yes.
Okay, the
It's on
S
the back
version's
side.
been moved, and it's been seconded. Mr. Starr moved it, and I think Mr. Honeman seconded it. Debbie? Your microphone, ma'am, it doesn't seem to be working. Could you speak directly into it?
I have one titled S1 on 292, 292, not 293. Never mind. Pardon me.
Okay, so we've all got the version that says 2010-293S, correct? It's in front of us.
On one side, it's an Assembly memorandum, Mr. Chairman. One side, AM 542-210A.
Right, on one side is AM 542-2010A. On the other side is AR 2010-293S. Ms. Alexander, any other comment, ma'am?
No, sir.
Okay. We start moving with a lot of these things. Moving second, any discussion from Assembly members? Mr. Honeman.
I just noticed on the last, and it'll go to that more than this, but I think the two tie together, and that is the shooting range out in Eklutna. I know Mr. Starr worked really diligently at, and out of the chiefs here, and I know that we did some reductions on the last document. I just encourage that the administration, clearly, this is a needed facility, and there was a bigger price tag. I recognize there's some concerns, so I just urge that we work through that and try to get that on our CIB and CIP. Thank you.
In fact, the mayor said he's going from 17 million down to what, 1.7 million, Mr. Mayor?
I think it was 1.5.
1.5, so there was a tactical punching error along the way. Any other comments from Assembly members? If not, please vote. Item was approved unanimously by the body. Mr. Starr.
Move notice of
Immediate reconsideration.
Immediate
No vote
reconsideration.
urged.
Urged no vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Mr. Honeman seconded. Mr. Starr moved it. Vote yes.
I can't vote. She doesn't want us to do after that last one, Mike.
Urge no vote, Debbie.
Yes. For that side of the table,
We
a
can't.
no
can't. I
vote is
think the
urged.
clerk is afraid of Ms. Osiander and I voting again.
She's not letting me bring the screen up.
Is this what we finally agreed on?
Huh?
No, but it-
I can't. It won't let me.
Keep this up, I'm going to vote yes again.
You what?
There we go.
There's voting in progress. A no vote is urged. It's the red one. Elvie? She's not down there. I need to get you a hand machine so you can punch in from wherever you're at.
No, you want yet? No.
It's all right. It went down to that side now. That item will not be reconsidered by the body. Here's your copy. Next item in front of us is AO 2010-7. This is 11J. Adopting and appropriating funds for 2011 Municipal Utilities Enterprise Activities Operating Budget and the 2011 Municipal Utilities/Enterprise Activities Capital Budget. 3 public hearings were held, 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending. Mr. Flynn.
Mr. Starr made the motion. I'll make the second, sir.
Yeah, and that's 2010-73S.
Okay.
And I'll just yield to Mr. Flynn as an adjunct member of the committee for this purpose. He did some work for us, recommended back to the committee various actions. And as you'll notice, the enterprise budgets do encompass 6 different divisions, I guess it is, or 7. And there are also amendments that were tendered prior to that we talked about at the work session that are included already. And I have just handed out a floor amendment for another portion of that. But I believe it's Mr. Flynn to summarize the process a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We've moved 2010-73S.
That is correct. And
Mr. Flynn, sir.
the S version includes the $30,000 reduction in the port budget that we discussed Friday. What it does not include is, well, we also talked about the AWU ERP program in the context of what's coming next, the capital budget. Since our work session, it has come to our attention there's actually some operating money also in AWU's budget for the ERP process, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Starr to discuss his amendment.
Mr. Starr, sir.
I'd like to move the amendment I just handed out, which essentially changes page 1 of the budget page, lines 30 and 31. It reduces the Anchorage waste utility proposed budget by $100,000 for a revised number of $51,879,000. There's a combined amendment also in this one that shows a reduction to the wastewater utility portion of $100,000 as well for a final budget number of $42,720,000.
That was seconded by you, Mr. Flynn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that brings into the alignment the corrections to the budgets for the ERP capital program. This makes changes to the operating side of a corresponding amount.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman, on the motion in front of us?
Well, and as a technical procedural question, and forgive me, I'm inclined to make an amendment on line 34 for the Port of Anchorage, the $30,000 for advertising. I'd like to make an amendment to include that back in after some thoughtful reconsideration.
Mr. Harmon,
One at a time.
finish this amendment, and you're
Let's
welcome.
just deal with this amendment,
Yes.
sir, if you don't
Will do.
mind.
Will do.
Okay. Have you asked the administration on this amendment? Yes. It's the water utility and the wastewater utility. What's the administration's position on this?
We'll concur with the will of the Assembly, sir.
Gee, we should have tried that earlier. Okay. Any other comments from Assembly members? Is there any objection to this amendment by Assembly members? Not seeing any objections, that amendment's passed. Both Mr. Flynn and Mr. Starr. So,
Now, go. Do your thing.
Mr. Honeman, sir.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move an amendment to this document, the S version, line 34 to Port of Anchorage, in the amount of $15,000 instead of $30,000 for advertising costs. And I can expound on it if I need to.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. It was seconded by Mr. Gutierrez, ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
Push your buttons. There. Paul?
Mr. Chairman, at reflection on this, and I understand Mr. Flynn's amendment on this, and having had conversations with the folks at the port, Mr. Buffalo, it strikes me that we have, and being on the port committee as well, listening to the information we're getting in our work sessions with the committee, we've got a nearly $800 million, probably going to be over $1 billion project going on here. The significance of the port, obviously, to the public and those maybe listening, is that about 90 to 95, well, at least 85% conservatively figures, goods and services come through the port. If it comes to Alaska and gets distributed through Alaska, it comes into our port. And this monies would be used and utilized in advertising and distributing information, education and information to some critical persons throughout the state in order to secure funding. Right now, we're woefully short, as we all know, and the challenges are going to get greater, not lesser. So I think this is, at least meets the port's needs, I'd say halfway, gives them a challenge to make sure that they can sharpen their pencil, get efficient, and still reach their goal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments on this amendment? Please vote. The amendment was approved. Anything else? Okay, please vote on the main motion in front of us, as amended. That was approved by the body. Mr. Starr, could you make a usual motion, please?
Sure, move immediate reconsideration.
Second.
And urge a no vote.
Red one?
It's the red one.
I was a second.
Mike, what are you pushing blue?
See, can we do it?
Okay, that item will not be reconsidered by the body. Thank you. Next item in front of us is item 11K. It's AR 2010-292S. And I don't think there's an S1 version, is there? You got an S1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's an S1 version. Need a motion on the S1 version.
So move 2010-292S1.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Was moved by Mr. Starr, second by Ms. Johnston. Mr. Starr, sir. Comments?
No, I have no comments. Just urge approval.
Okay. I've got a copy of it. It is. Any other comments from Assembly members? Cheryl Frasca.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to the body, ma'am.
Thank you. What we'll need to do is amend this to reflect the changes you just made in the previous
Okay.
items. So if you'll just do a generic one, and we'll correct the 2011 numbers here to
Okay.
reflect what you approved.
Do you have an amendment, or you just want to make an amendment that leaves the discretion of the administration to correct it in line with what we did earlier?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's the intent of the Assembly.
So move.
Thank you.
Second. Whatever.
Moved and seconded, ask unanimous, see no objection. You're directed to bring it in line with what we did earlier, ma'am. Thank you. Please vote. That was approved unanimously. Mr. Starr, need a motion.
Move immediate reconsideration.
Second.
Urgent no vote.
I know, my button's not lit yet. Thank you. Okay, please vote. And it's the one over here for those. Ms. Johnston, you might want to look at your vote.
Oh.
Okay.
You know, it's all the paperwork we
That's
get.
a no vote. Thank you.
ACDA,
Mr. Chairman, I strongly object. You didn't give Ms. Osiander and I that opportunity.
11L, Mr. Chairman.
Reconsider, and I'll see about doing that again. Item 11L is in front of us now. It's AO 2010-74 and NAS versions. Adopting and appropriating funds for the 2011 operating capital budget of the Anchorage Community Development Authority. 3 public hearings were held, 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending. Anybody want to take a shot at that?
Sure.
See if we can find an S version?
There isn't.
I don't think there is.
I don't have an S version of 2010-74 and move approval.
And I second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. And this is the one you use the green button on.
Mr. Drummond?
That item is approved by the body. Mr. Starr, sir.
Move immediate reconsideration.
Second.
Urgent no vote.
There. Please vote.
Madam Clerk, if you need me as a seconder on, I was.
Mr. Burke? Okay, Mr. Jackson.
The other color, ma'am. We're having problems down on this end now. That item will not be reconsidered by the body. Next item in front of us is item 11M. It's AR 2010-291, adopting the 2011-2016 6-year fiscal program. 3 public hearings were held, 10/26, 11/9, and 11/23. No motion is pending.
Move to approve 2010-291, and note there's a AM change 540-210 with an alpha.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Ms. Johnston on this item?
Yes, I didn't make any comments on the budget because I was saving it for the 6-year fiscal plan. And I like, it's a chance to be all by myself. But, as we're going through the hearings and as I've been looking at the news, I kind of feel some of this is deja vu from when it was in 2008, when the price of oil was allowing the state to have some largesse. And as you all know, we now have a budget surplus of about $11 billion, and everybody eyes it willfully. And in 2008, when we were doing the labor contracts and the budget then, there was people that were complaining that there were a group of us were saying the sky was falling. Because here we were getting $3,300 plus from the state with a energy fund and a permanent fund dividend. We need to start looking at long-term planning. And we're doing that on the city level, and we're doing it with the 6-year fiscal plan. But as everybody noted, we have another year of cuts. And this year, our cuts we're getting pretty close to cuts that really are going to impact our service. And it's 3 years of cuts. We started 2009 in January, and we've been cutting 3 times. And the other day, I was eavesdropping on 2 federal employees, and they were commenting about the wage freeze. And the younger one said...
Proposed.
Huh?
Proposed.
Proposed wage freeze, sorry, Chairman. And the younger one said, you know, he was bothered by it, but he got thinking about it, and he realized that he was living a pretty comfortable life with what he was making. And he looked at it in terms of looking at the service men and women who are in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he really felt that he really had no room to complain about the proposed wage freeze, that he was comfortable and he was still felt that he was providing good service. As we all know, we're looking at least an 8% increase in contracted wage increase next year and the following years, and we have this budget deficit. And I just would like to ask that the administration really consider a wage freeze and consider even in their own administration setting the standard high and taking a wage freeze themselves as we approach next year. I think we really need to, I'm fearful of what we're going to be doing to public safety. We've already cut into public transportation, we've cut into libraries, and we're starting to cut into the basic social and community network of this community. And we're going to get to a point where we can't maintain what we have. And I don't think that's a good way of building or maintaining community. So I would like, as we approach first quarter budget, I would like the administration to start thinking of wage freezes. I would like to look at another budget that doesn't look at another $12 to $15 million cut in services. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Starr, sir.
Yeah, and I know we've all had a busy week, and I don't profess to want to take any more time to recap, but I want to reiterate again, I'm very much impressed with the understanding that this body has on what our challenges are coming up. We're starting to look down the road a ways, and that's really good fiscal planning and what we're up here to do. And that's a kudos, but it also is to draw attention. The AM is as important as the action item. The AM has on page 24 what makes sense to look at. And I'm not to criticize the mayor, but we had a detailed fiscal plan last year, which was very, very good. However, we didn't attain it with this year's budget. We compromised again. The mayor did a little bit of giving back. We just made amendments tonight that continue to add to that. We didn't meet the fiscal goals of last year, however hard we tried. The fiscal forecast for this year, we didn't make. Every time we don't get that far, we continue to push the problem down the field, and we have to face the issues here. We have also other issues, and I'll stop here in a minute because we're tired, but we have other issues that are going to start to present themselves here in the next couple of weeks. Jennifer already spoke about the fund balance with that as it relates to first quarter. And again, I've talked about it every work session I can. We have a problem in our Fund 181 balance, and you guys up here know what that is. That's the Building Safety Fund. That department is in arrears. We're not paying our bills month to month, and that partly due to the decrease, again, in the permitting fees, all of that. We have pressures in the Fund 181 tag in our fund balance. We have also the legal ramifications that we heard about in some of those settlements that are coming down the pike. We need to prioritize our speak to accommodate an academy in the police department. I've made that commitment publicly. The mayor spoke about it publicly last Friday. So again, we have these undiscussed areas, but they are going to continue to pressure that efficiencies and those gains that we have. But boy, if page 24 of the forecast doesn't ring true to you, we need to have a budget session over a cup of coffee or the CFO or somebody, because you really need to understand what's coming down the pike. And I'm quite frankly flummoxed. I'm willing to stay in this game and do it because I think that that's what our job is. But boy, it's more than low-hanging fruit that's gone. we've got some tough decisions. So I'll prime that. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to chair this discussion and provide some organization to it. I'm happy to stay at it. Thank you.
So that means you want to do it next year, too? Mr. Gutierrez?
So inclined.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this issue, but I think there's some points that bear making. Again, and just very quickly, to the administration, I know we made some changes. How far under the cap were we with the budget that we just passed? About 10 million?
Based on the amendment, the S version, and the amendments tonight, probably about 8.3 million.
8.3, so we'll round it to 8 to make it easier on my feeble mind to do the math. So if at the bottom end you're predicting a $12 to $15 million gap next year, at the bottom end, had we taxed to the cap tonight, it would be a $4 million gap that we were facing. Now, I'm not advocating that we should always try to shoot for the cap, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge if we have that $12 to $15 million gap, it's because that's what this body chose, consciously chose. We all knew that, right? So if we have anything more than a $4 million budget gap next year because of the 8.3 that we were under the cap this year, it's because it's a choice that we made. And I think that we need to be honest enough to stand up and say, yes, I chose to exacerbate the budget gap in coming years by not taxing to the cap. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, I'll just be brief, but I just want to make a few points, too. There are many, we talked and have learned many challenges ahead of us in a lot of areas, and the economy is probably the most permanent one right now. We're seeing at the federal level, in my assessment, they're running in trillion-dollar deficits. We've got a problem in the trade, and it's manifesting just recently, even through our Senate race, that's still, at this point, not officially over. We've got commitments. We've got commitments to this community that we have to meet as a government, and I'm really interested in what's the right-sized government, not a government that's bloated or big or more than we need, but what's right-sized. And there's a figure, the dollar figure that comes with that, and we can't pretend that we can't afford it. We need to make sure that we understand what the necessities are, what people want, and again, represent the will of the community that we ask for their input. And I remember specifically one gentleman getting up at one of the budget learning processes and said, what are we here for? Is anybody really going to listen to what we have to say? Are you really going to vote in favor of the things that we're really wanting, or cut in the areas that we're suggesting you do? And I have to say, once again, and to the extent that I'm involved as well in making these decisions, guilty. We didn't. We missed the mark. Mr. Starr said it himself. There are areas still that and I feel fairly strongly that we could tighten up the ship and not necessarily need those particular areas in this municipal government because they don't have a direct deliverable to the citizens in a service area. And yet at the same time, we've continued to cut in the areas of public transportation and such. So it gets down to whether we need to cut or we want to cut. And I really do believe that we're cutting because we want to. And that's a collective want to. We've agreed, we've made commitments amongst ourselves, we've worked through this budget process tirelessly, and quite frankly, I am tired. I'm exhausted. This is my first go at the budget, and I hope next year it gets a little easier. I know you assured me that it won't, and I'm probably got that to look forward to. I'm willing to stand in the fight as well, Mr. Starr, and I just have to close with our economy in this city is good, better than most cities. Our economy in this state is great, but we do have challenges ahead. We can't keep punting the football down the field, as Mr. Starr said, and I agree with that. We have to make tough decisions, but we also have to step up. I'd like these little bond holidays we had last year with the school district this coming year. I believe we may see a couple of bonds coming in. And where the municipality has left money on the table one year, perhaps the next year we shouldn't. So perhaps we do the holiday and flip it back and forth. I like having a fiscal program. I'm not necessarily in agreement with this particular fiscal program. Some of the numbers I still am concerned with, but I trust that this administration is giving us the current, most recent information and data available. So that much I'm going on as a deliverable, and I do agree with the long-term strategized planning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Doesn't appear to be any other comments. I was thinking of what Ms. Johnston said concerning the president. Keep in mind that's his proposed. What I find interesting is all the things he left out. They are not going to have a pay cut for any of Congress.
That's right.
Nor their employees. They're going to leave the post office out of cuts, and it goes on from there. It's a very targeted cut, but it doesn't include what the federal government does. Right now, they're projecting a $56 billion savings in 10 years. It's always interesting when the federal government starts portraying things. They always put it 10 years off beyond the current administration in D.C. It's always fun. Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a final opportunity to thank all of those in the administration that worked so hard to put this budget together. Cheryl Frasca and her team from the OMB is here tonight, and certainly Lucinda and the CFO's staff all worked diligently to put these things together to respond to your amendments, to make sure that by tonight you had documents that accurately reflected the will of this administration and the will of the Assembly. So I thank all of them for their hard work, and probably some well-deserved time off is on somebody's agenda, and again, well-deserved is the key word. Do have to just respond real briefly. The comments that this body consciously chose not to tax to the tax cap and thus creates part of the problem for next year, you know that you have a structural imbalance when even if you tax to the maximum allowed by law, you still can't meet your expenditures. And the reason for that is some members of this body consciously chose in 2008 to increase the cost of city government beyond the revenues available to the city. So to put the burden of that mistake on the taxpayers in times of a recession is just not wise economic strategy. So I think the body made a wise decision today to hold the line on property taxes. And going forward, I think you also, are looking for new revenue sources, which I think is a good idea, because if you can't cut your way out of a problem, sometimes creative revenues do help. But the bottom line is we have a structural imbalance that is created by having expenditures exceed even the maximum revenues you can currently generate. That's the problem. So I would ask this body going forward, some members have very good relationships with the employee unions, and I would ask you to use that influence to talk to them and see if we can't come to some sort of an agreement for the upcoming budgets where working together and with concessions that we can avoid really drastic cuts next year and the following year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to your staff. Cheryl, it was great having you here, and Lucinda, thank you both. I've been on the Assembly for a long time, various iterations, and I've been here when we've been at 10:30 at night, hastily scribbling down numbers trying to figure out exactly what we did. Thank you, because tonight we didn't have that problem. And the Mayor can talk to those, because he was here with me during those time frames when it was just absolutely, what did we do and where are the numbers at? So thank you for tonight. It was easy. Please vote. That was approved unanimously by the body. Mr. Starr, one last time.
Move immediate reconsideration.
Second.
And urge a no vote.
Thank you. And that is the red button.
The red button, in the middle.
We're on both sides of the table. Come on, machine. Start voting. That will not be reconsidered.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
If I might, I recognize a couple of folks in the audience here, and I know we waited through the budget process. I recognize earlier in the break we had a discussion with 3 students from Chugach High School. I'm not sure if there's any other persons here in the audience still working for the project, if they could have them identify themselves. And also, Mr. Chairman, I recognize one of our Animal Control Advisory Board appointees. He got here a little bit behind Mr. Millspaw, so I don't know if you want him to come forward and introduce himself and be recognized.
Good.
So Mr. Nelson Price is in the audience, if Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Assembly. My name is Nelson Price. I'm privileged to be recognized here and to be a future member of the Animal Control Board, and I appreciate everything in there. And I look forward to doing a good job
See
for
us after a couple of years and let us know how you liked it.
Will do.
We appreciate your service, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
And the kids we have here.
There's 3 young ladies in the I think about third row back.
Come on down front. Come on. Come on.
So, Mr. Ostander, Mr. Starr, these are your constituents to be here? I'm not sure if any of them are 18 yet, but...
We have on good authority, if you get a little bit embarrassed during the meeting, you get extra credit, so that's good news. Come on up.
Just tell us what school you go to, your names, your age.
I'm Emily Quitz, I'm 17, and I go to Chigac High School.
I'm Josie Hartley. I'm also 17, and I go to Chigac High School.
I'm Lila Hansen, I'm 17, and Chigac High School.
Thank you for attending the meeting. And we were nice to everybody tonight. You can talk to your teacher and say there was no blood or anything. It worked out well. Thank you.
Are we going to be on TV?
Oh, yeah.
You will be. I'm told there's 2 boys in the back room. Are you from a class assignment too? Or just because the girls are here? One left alone, I think. If you want us to sign it, you need to come down and give us your name, your age, the school you go to. Otherwise, we don't know you were here.
I'm Connor Michael. I go to West. You guys might know my mom, Mary Jane Michael.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I'm Aaron Olson. I go to West, too. I'm 18.
Oh, yeah. I'm 17.
Well, thank you for being here tonight,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
you guys want to...
Bring them. We'll sign them.
Here's your West I got. Oh, he got it.
You spent a long time with your mom here. Thank you. We're now down on page 5, 14B, Resolution AR 2010-314, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to name the Anchorage Museum Erasmussen Center 4th Floor Gallery. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the clerk, spell your last name. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome, ma'am. I'm sorry we couldn't get you in earlier, but we have to get the budget done by law.
Say Laguerre. I am Donna Matthews. My last name is spelled Matthews. I am a member of the naming committee for the 4th floor gallery of the Anchorage Museum at the Rasmussen Center. We've held meetings and a public hearing and are now very pleased to recommend to you that this gallery be named the Brian E. Davies Chugach Gallery. We hope you've had a chance to visit the museum, see the new expansion and the wonderful things that it has to offer. A lot of the reason why it is so wonderful is because of the hard work of Mr. Davies. He's been a volunteer, practically full-time, for more than a decade, helping to create, supervising, shepherding the process. He has not only been a practically full-time volunteer, he's made a significant financial commitment to the capital program of the museum, and he has made a significant estate bequest for his very excellent art collection to be given to the museum. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from Assembly members. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Just to thank you, Mrs. Matthews, for your help in this process. It's an honor to recognize Mr. Davies, and I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. There are no other questions, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. It's about this one, yeah. Okay. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved in second. Any discussion from Assembly members? If not, please vote. That item was approved unanimously. You got it. Thanks for waiting as long as you did, ma'am. Next item in front of us is item 14C, Resolution AR 2010-315, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to name the 9th Avenue Pathway. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward, state your last name clearly, and spell it for the clerk, please. Hearing and saying no, in public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body? Moved in second. Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That was approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us As item 14D, ordinance AO 2010-87, S version also, an ordinance amending Municipal Code Chapter 8.35 to prohibit the manufacture, assembly, distribution, marketing, sale, or use or possession of substances containing synthetic cannabinoids, and he does a lot better job than I do in pronouncing it, to prohibit the sale or possession of paraphernalia related to the use of synthetic cannabinoids, to provide penalties. You love that name, don't you? And amending section 14.60.030 to provide for civil penalties. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Billy Ray Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S. Though on the surface, this looks like a good idea, because we don't want our kids smoking pot or cannabinoids or whatever they are of any type. But I don't believe in trying to legislate morality. I would prefer to educate morality. If we're going to spend our money, let's not spend our money on police and attorneys and jails. Let's spend our money on education. That's all. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying none, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve the S version.
Second.
Moved and seconded for the S version. Mr. Gutierrez, there's an amendment that needs to be made. If you take a look on page 6 of 6, line 9, it says passed and approved by the Anchorage Municipal Assembly this blank day of blank 2010. I think it should be changed to be, actually section 5. And the ordinance should be effective on blank 2010. I think it needs to say, should be effective upon 30 days from the passage of the Anchorage Assembly on the advice of council.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Ask unanimous. You agree, Julia?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Any objection? Seeing none, that's approved. What? The second was Mr. Honeman.
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hear this word in my sleep now, and it's driving me absolutely insane. Do you remember the old song?
Along with this name?
Do you remember the old song that went mana da 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 da? You know the song.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I hear that word cannabinoid, and it's driving me crazy. But I want to thank the administration for a lot of really good work on this. I have one question of legal. We, in this ordinance, are banning the sale, distribution, marketing, blah, 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 is selling it to anyone, but we're only banning possession on municipal property. Is that accurate, or am I misreading it?
Through the chair, Ms. Gutierrez, I believe you're misreading it. If you're looking at subsection D on page 3 at the bottom, line 43, that's in addition to the other prohibitions that also include possession.
Right. It says products containing synthetic cannabinoids may not be possessed, ingested, burned, incinerated, or ignited in any public place or on any property owned, leased, or controlled by the municipality. So is someone's vehicle a public place?
No, sir.
So somebody could smoke this in their car while they're driving down the road?
Mr. Chairman, I'm meeting in a minute.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman,
Would you like to take a break for a minute?
I could use a 5-minute break myself. So
We're taking a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to propose two amendments.
Okay.
On the advice of council. We'll do the simpler
On the S version?
On the S version.
Give us page and line.
We'll do the simpler one first. Page 2 of 6, line 25. Delete the words "sale of," so that heading would now simply read synthetic cannabinoids.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, ask unanimous consent. This is on page 2 of 6, line 25. It will now read synthetic cannabinoids.
Or something like that.
Any objection? Seeing none, Mike is our official pronouncer on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, the second amendment I'd like to move on page 3 of 6, lines 43 through 48. That would be the section D.
Okay.
I guess the best way to do this, and I will hand the clerk this in writing.
Yeah, she wants it in writing.
We're going to delete certain words. So on line 44, after the words incinerated or ignited in, delete the rest of that line. On 45, delete property owned, leased, or controlled by, and then leave in the municipality, and then delete everything else.
Okay.
So that section would now read as amended. Products containing synthetic cannabinoids may not be possessed, ingested, burned, incinerated, or ignited in the municipality. Period.
Is there a second?
Second. Motion.
Ask unanimous. Is there any objection? Not seeing one, that's approved, Mike.
Thank you. Just some general comments. Again, the administration did a heck of a lot of work on this, and I think we got something good to start with. These things always morph and change as time goes on, and we'll have to probably revisit this at some point in the future. It's worth noting for Assembly members who may not know that the week before, or the week of Thanksgiving, in fact, I think the Wednesday before Thanksgiving,
24th,
we got notice from the Drug Enforcement Agency, or administration, I should say, that 5 of these synthetic cannabinoids, some of which we specifically reference in this ordinance, have been added to the Schedule 1 controlled substance list. That's a big step forward because on a national scale, the federal government has seen widespread abuse of and production of these products. Now, what this law that we're looking at here tonight covers far more than those 5, because there are more than 100 of those from what I've been told. And the problem with the DEA putting 5 of them on the controlled substance list is there are 95 or so more that the manufacturers might go to. Well, in the municipality, we've got that covered if we pass this particular ordinance. While we name several specifically, it does say any synthetic cannabinoid, which I think might protect us from enterprising chemists in the future, hopefully. I think this is a great idea. This is, the federal government is moving on this, has already moved on this. The state government is moving on this. Senator Kevin Meyer, a former member of this body, is moving on this in the Alaska State Legislature. I have urged my representatives in that body to support him and his efforts in this, and I would hope that we would all do the same. I don't think there's any reason not to do this. This is a threat to our a community that we can't afford to ignore. And I find the confluence of the Obama administration, the Sullivan administration, this assembly, and hopefully soon the Alaska State Legislature and the Parnell administration all agreeing on something. It's got to be the right thing to do. If all of these people agree on it, it's got to be the right thing to do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, for all the same reasons that Mr. Gutierrez had indicated, and just one thing, I note that I know Mr. Powers is still in the audience, and I'd like to kind of flip it just a little bit and ask and urge you, in fact, to get educated on this. No need to come down, just to listen in. To get educated on this product. It's not a drug per se. It's not marijuana. It's not. Now, ironically, and Mr. Gutierrez had indicated, the Drug Enforcement Administration moved to temporarily place this to the Federal Register, which is the first step, and they're announcing essentially that by 2012 they intend to indicate this and include this on the Controlled Substances Act. of America. Then the state legislature in January, in a pre-filed bill by Senator Meyer, intends to also add it to the Scheduled Controlled Substances Act of Alaska. We don't have that luxury in the municipality of Anchorage. What we can do is make this a misdemeanor crime to possess and all the things listed in this document. And of course, I'd urge the passage. But more than anything, Mr. Powers, and to this body, and people that are here in this audience, and people that are listening in, I'd urge you to get educated on this process, on this product. These were mistakes made by chemists. They were posted, and for the lack of better definition, we probably had some sort of wiki something or other here. I don't know. And this information got out, and now these items are being produced, some in the lower 48, and we're trying to prevent that from being produced here in Anchorage and in Alaska and affecting it. These products pose serious and significant health risk up to and including death, and they offer nothing in the way of positive anything to any person who ingests it. So I'd urge that you get educated and informed on this product, and it is most certainly the right thing to do to make it illegal. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Mr. Gutierrez's amendment, I just need a little bit of clarification, because I believe what you took out is or ignited in the municipality, and that's it, right?
That's what we left in, yeah.
Okay. That's what you left in, right. But don't you think since public places removed that, you probably need to delete the following sentence?
I did.
Second.
You did?
I did.
Okay, thank you. I missed that. Thank you.
That section should only read, products containing synthetic cannabinoids may not be possessed, ingested, burned, or incinerated or ignited in the municipality.
Period.
Period.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Drummond?
I had the same thing to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, the military just put this on the banned list for all of our military people that are stationed up here, too. So we need to... I remember how easy it was for Mike to bring in a baggie with this. You paid, how much, $25 for it?
$25, and by the way, I need to get rid of it soon, because of what the DEA did, it'll be a felony for me to have it in my house after Christmas Eve. Happy New Year, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if you'd like to buy some, Mike has some available, at least for the next 30 days. Please vote. That was approved unanimously by the body. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for joining with us on this. It's always nice to see when we've got something like this coming with the entire Assembly and the administration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and particular thanks to the municipal attorney and particularly his staff member, Jennifer Messick, who brought this to the public's attention through a series of public announcements and seminars on the subject. So thanks to them.
Thank you. Next item, friends, is item 14E, Ordinance AO 2010-84, an ordinance authorizing adoption of a Port of Anchorage Terminal Tariff Number 7. And there is an Assembly memorandum with it, AM 601-2010. Public hearing this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no on public hearings, closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I need a second. Second by Mr. Flynn. Discussion from Assembly members. Doesn't appear to be any. Please vote. That was approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14F, Ordinance AO 2010-85, an ordinance of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing the borrowing and accepting from State of Alaska Drinking Water Fund an aggregate amount not to exceed $18,062,224.
Way of reading.
Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no on public hearings, close. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
I need a second. Moved and seconded. Discussion from Assembly members. Please vote. That item was approved unanimously. Next item is item 14G, Resolution AR 2010-340, a resolution of the Municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, accepting State of Alaska municipal matching grant per Senate Bill 230 in the amount of $4 million to be applied towards the Gurgood wastewater treatment facility upgrade. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing saying none, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moving to second. Any discussion from assembly members? Please vote. Item was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us, item 14H, Resolution AR 2010-357, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly approving alcoholic beverage conditional use for a package store use and license number 2614 in the B1A Local and Neighborhood Business District for Tesoro North Star Company doing business as To Go Tesoro located.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward, state your name clearly for the record. Welcome, sir. We found something you liked.
Well, yes.
Just need to, tell us your name and spell your last name if you would, sir.
Jim McCoy, Lighthouse Christian Fellowship. McCoy is MC capital K-O-Y.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Lighthouse Christian Fellowship, we want to express our disappointment, well, should I say, our opposition to Tesoro having this liquor store. First of all, I'd like to say that the human traffic in the area is already at a very high because of an existing liquor store. And we have people that ride the bus into the area to go to that particular liquor store. And in the summertime, it's extremely high. In the winter, it's still high. But I want to outline a few problems that we currently have and some past problems and what we perceive as being a major problem. There's a lot of liquor bottles on the ground, litter because of the liquor. We've had to call CSP to come to get people that are drunk and to pick them up. In fact, we had to call the police in late spring because of a female that got assaulted at the bus stop. This female and the individuals assimilated having sex with the female. She didn't know she was in the world. The children go back and forth to school, go through this area, and our concern is that if this liquor store is permitted to be put in there into the Tesoro gas station, that the human trafficking is going to increase, and that would be a hazard not only to the individuals that are drinking and they get into the ruckus in the area, but also to the children going back and forth. So that is we strongly oppose this liquor store being placed into Tesoro. Thank you so much for your time.
Mr. Flynn has a question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy, for coming down this evening. Did you happen to have the opportunity to attend any of the Government Hill Community Council meetings where they discussed this license application?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you get a copy of the added restrictions that the Government Hill Community Council asked to have placed on this license?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll get you one.
Thank you.
And please listen to these next two gentlemen, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Amanda?
Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all?
Yes, my name is Bob French, F-R-E-N-C-H. I'm the president of the Government Hill Community Council. We have taken this up, and I appreciate Mr. McCoy's comments on this. And I think that a lot of the conditions that we have put forward in the resolution that hopefully you folks have in front of you will do a lot to stop some of the problems that he's talking about. We don't have a chance right now to change the conditional use permit for the other liquor store on Government Hill, but we do have some opportunities here to put some conditions that will hopefully make this a little bit better situation up there. We're essentially mirroring the conditions that are on the downtown area, and we've added a couple more including that they have a 100% ID check for all of the things. So we're hoping that will help solve a problem. And I will also say that we have seen quite a bit more chronic inebriates in the neighborhood, and we would welcome having a little bit more enforcement of both some of the laws. And I'll say that there was a cop car when I was driving down here who was talking to an inebriate underneath a bridge just while I was driving over. So appreciate the help, and hopefully you could approve this with the restrictions that are on our resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. French. I appreciate you coming out tonight. Is it, from what you said, you have another location on Government Hill, so that you would have then two?
We have a liquor store which is cleverly called the Liquor Store, and this would provide a second package store on Government Hill.
I appreciate your willingness to abide by all of these conditions, and that's heading in the right direction. Although we're not specifically talking about the conditional use for your cleverly named the liquor store, could you not voluntarily abide by these conditions as though they were part of your license?
I'm not the person asking for the license. I'm from the community council, and
it's been a long night. I don't even know what button to push half the time now. My mistake.
One of the things that we have as one of the whereases in this resolution, the Government Hill Community Council is planning on putting these same conditions for both liquor stores. Okay. And I think that's coming up within the next year.
And I presume someone from Tesoro is probably going to speak tonight, and you might want to ask my mistimed question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Honeman?
Yes, and I want to thank you, Mr. French, for your community council's resolution in support, particularly and specifically the conditions. And just to let again yourself, you probably already heard this spiel. And to the body, I'm in support of every alcohol licensee coming before a renewal, particularly the package stores. And I'm not opposed to it to being all alcohol sales to enforce under condition of their license the 100% ID check. I think that's going to get us. There are over 3,000 people with red stripes on their licenses. They're prohibited by the court from purchasing or consuming alcohol while that red stripe provision is in effect. And some of those are 3 to 4 years. And the only way we're going to know is if the sellers are asking for IDs. We don't get it any other way because there's a lack of some teeth that we're working on the state statute. So I appreciate the community council being involved and in depth. I don't know if Mr. Flynn worked with you on with some information on this. I suspect maybe so, and I'm thankful for Mr. Flynn. And with these conditions, I would support it, but without them, I wouldn't. I know I see some opposition from the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward. That's you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I am counsel for Tesoro North Star Company. I can make a couple of comments and introduce our regional manager, Mr. James Sturley.
If you would, please, sir.
My
clerk wants your last name.
Yes. My name is Fred Odson, O-D-S-E-N.
Thank you, sir.
I am a member of the law firm of Hughes Gorski. Many of you know us as the Hughes Thorsness firm historically. We represent Tesoro North Star Company. It is an Alaska corporation. It is applying for a conditional use permit for a package store liquor license at its existing convenience store and fuel station at 500 Hollywood Drive in the Government Hill neighborhood business district. Present with me is Mr. James Sturley. Mr. Sturley is the regional manager of Tesoro North Star Company. He resides in Eagle River and has his office in Anchorage. He oversees Tesoro North Star Company's operations throughout the state. Tesoro has been doing business in Anchorage and in Alaska for many decades. It's operated a convenience store and fuel station at this site for about 19 years. From a procedural point of view, Tesoro is in agreement with the findings and conclusions set forth in the Planning Department's staff analysis in this matter, including its recommendation that the conditional use permit be approved. Mr. Sturley has been Tesoro's point person and actively in communication with the Government Hill community and with the Community Council. He is also familiar with the design and all of the operational details of this site as well as others in the state, of which there are 20?
20 liquor stores. We operate 20 liquor stores.
The Government Hill Community Council has been noted, has issued a final resolution, which is effectively a conditional non-opposition to the conditional use permit application. And the sum and substance of the matter is that the Council has agreed not to oppose the approval, provided Tesoro complies with the restrictions on operations that are substantially analogous to those in the downtown community area under the existing law that was brought forth largely by Mr. Flynn. There are a couple of differences, as the chairman of the Community Council noted. Tesoro has provided the municipality with a letter signed by Mr. Sturley in his capacity as regional manager, addressed to Mayor Sullivan, whereby Tesoro North Store Company would agree to accept and abide by the conditions set forth in the proposed resolution and in the Community Council resolution. Mr. Sturley is available here and will provide any additional further input and comments, may have some rebuttal, and I'm prepared to answer questions that might arise from a procedural or legal or organizational point of view.
Thank you, sir. Good timing.
Hello, James Sturley, S-T-U-R-L-E-Y. As stated, regional manager for Tesoro. Really, that means I'm the person involved in operations. Yes, worked hand in glove with the Community Council to develop the conditional use permit restrictions, and I believe very much they were those provided and developed with this body for downtown. So, bottom line, we respect the restrictions, and we feel there's value in operating under those conditions. I'm more than willing to help with anything else, but I'll turn myself over to yourselves.
Thank you. We have a few questions. Mr. Flynn, sir. Your microphone.
Mr. Sturley, just to confirm, you agreed to these without duress? You weren't kidnapped or held hostage by the Community Council?
Yeah, I mean, operating a liquor store business these days, there's got to be more and more responsibility on the retailer. I think that's fair to say, and absolutely we feel those add burden to an operator, but they are reasonable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sturley, and on behalf of the Government Hill neighborhood, I appreciate your willingness to work with the Community Council and the community.
Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez, sir.
I'm not going to ask you any questions. I think they've been answered. But I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the spirit of cooperation, and I hope that your business is fruitful and that you do well in the coming months. So thank you very much again. I appreciate the help.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify on this issue, please come forward.
Hello again. Billy Ray Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S. Again, I appreciate this body's attempt at legislating morality. I think that the inebriants that one of our gentlemen testified about have a whole lot more to do with the incubator of the Brother Francis shelter. I mean, we got a bumper crop of inebriants, and I don't think it has a whole lot to do with that liquor store on Government Hill. Along with the Red Nose Inn that was produced as a possible way to take care of our inebriants without any fruit so far. But let's not jerk around some business people here that are trying to make a buck. If we've got inebriants, let's deal with the inebriant problem, not the business problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are no questions. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no on public hearings, close the West West body. Mr. Flynn.
Move to approve.
Second.
Which version?
The S version, please. Second.
Okay. S version's been moved. Mr. Flynn, sir.
Yeah, Mr. McCoy, would you come back up to the podium for a moment? Sir?
Yes, sir.
I'm not asking you to change your mind per se, but are you more comfortable with this liquor license application now you see the conditions imposed?
Well, I see the conditions, and if your question, sir, is, am I in agreement with it, with the liquor store going in? No, my position stands as stated.
Okay. And do you feel a little bit better about it, though?
My position stands as stated.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, Mr. Flynn?
I'll just point out, as I did when Mr. Sturley came to speak with us, really appreciate the cooperation. He came and talked to the Community Council on several occasions. They worked together. I really actually didn't have anything to do with it, frankly. But they did a great job working together, and I appreciate the spirit of cooperation on both sides. I urge approval.
Thank you. Any other comments from Assembly members? Please vote. That S version was approved unanimously. We now have in front of us item 14I, Ordinance CO 2010-86, and in this version, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 8.75.040, fireworks to provide for personal use of certain common fireworks on private property without a municipal permit, for a limited number of hours at annual celebration of New Year, subject to restrictions. And the S version. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name and courtesy for the record. And spell your last name. Anyone at all? Welcome, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Claire Steffens, S-T-E-F-F-E-N-S. Thank you. I was going to have you imagine 20 seconds of fireworks. So if you can close your eyes and imagine the beauty of the visual fireworks and the sound of the fireworks, that reminds us all how wonderful they are when they are provided by the community at the Buttress area in the city of Anchorage. That brings the community together. It's something we all share. It's kind of our tradition. What will not bring the community together is having neighbor angry at neighbor because they're lighting fireworks. I've experienced this myself where the neighbors above me on a certain street, there are two houses that now, in violation of the law, explode fireworks. 6.5 hours will drive you crazy. And frankly, the sound of fireworks is a lot like the sound of guns, and it's very tempting. Imagine for 5 minutes a firework sound to a child who's terrified of it. Imagine your pets who are terrified. My pets are terrified of fireworks. I watch them quivering for hours on end because there's no place that I can put them. The bathroom, the basement, no way can my pets get away from the noise. The same problem occurs to people with post-traumatic stress syndrome, where the fireworks may flash their memories of horrible incidents during war or in other traumatic events. We have a noise ordinance to protect silence every day in the city. We don't even allow dogs to bark more than 10 minutes at a time. And the reason is that we really cherish the silence and the peace and quiet. Even allowing one day out of the year to have 6 hours of relentless noise and fireworks is too much. I mean, what it does is it steals from everybody who doesn't want to have the fireworks their peace and quiet. I do not want to end my old year and start my new year exhausted the next day because I was kept awake by fireworks. The idea of this in this ordinance that the use as defined means that nobody can have the fireworks off their property is silly. The sound alone travels off the property and it cannot be contained. Listen to boom, boom, bash, bash for 6.5 hours while people party, as they inevitably do when they light fireworks, is not fun. It's also not fun for the child who happens to pick up an unexploded ordnance to lose 3 fingers and an eye. I'll wind up. There are no penalties in the proposed ordinance. None. No teeth. We can't even enforce the ordinance we have now. How are you going to enforce this spotted area of fireworks? Please vote no for this fireworks ordinance. It's not worth it.
Sorry. Questions from Assembly members? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify?
Again, thank you, Billy Ray Powers, P-O-W-E-R-S. It is what it is. We got fireworks every year. It ain't going to change. I don't care what the law is. We got some civil disobedience in this community that says we blow fireworks. So we're going to blow fireworks. I personally don't blow fireworks. Not that I wouldn't. I just don't. But I'm also patriotic. I love America, and I love Alaska, and I love Anchorage. I would like to see this as extended to a more patriotic holiday like the 4th of July. I understand there's fire risk, there's other things involved with this, but some days it's rainy on the 4th of July. And man, that's a great day to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it. No comments. Any other comments on this item from public? Seeing none, public hearings closed. What's the wish of the
Move to
body?
approve the S version.
Is there a second?
Yes. Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
I'd like to propose amendments.
Go ahead, sir.
On line 5, at the end of the sentence, instead of 7:30 p.m., and propose an amendment to 8 p.m. as a start time. And
Why
on
don't you
line
propose an amendment to make it to 9:30 at the request of another Assembly member?
9:30?
9:30 to...
I'm sorry, page 2 of 2, it's line 17, item 5, subsection 5.
Right, we changed 7:30 to 9:30.
9:30? I'll go with that.
We get a second on that amendment?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, to conclude, instead of at 1:30, at 1 a.m., that'd be on the next line down, line 18.
It's fine.
And then finally, Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
on the same page, section 2, I believe at the end of line 38,
Yep.
this ordinance expires 2 years from date of passage,
Okay.
and that gives a chance for the community to weigh in. And
I'll second that as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got the amendments in front of us. Do you guys understand the amendments? Is there any objection to amendments? Seeing no objections, Paul, you've got all those amendments crafted into the S version.
Yes. Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Just to further, I think I'm looking at the body here. I think I'm the only one that's actually had to go out and actually enforce in the community on fireworks, both at July 4th and on New Year's Eve. And I can tell you that I think Mr. Powers is hit this one right on the head. I don't always agree with Mr. Powers on everything. I do agree with some things, and in this one here, I believe he said it quite adequately. The fireworks are, quite literally by ordinance of this municipality, prohibited even possessing in this municipality, yet they sell it a little more than an hour a drive away. They commercially advertise, even with those little blurted, faded, almost non-visible, caveats that you can't possess them in this municipality. People still do it. There are civil penalties, and you spend an inordinate amount of resources to go out, and we've done to the point now over the years operationally. We used to send officers to do what they call 1150 or drive-by security check in the area, and now it's just to locate in the area. And officers, including myself, have had near fisticuff fights with people trying to take fireworks away. They spend hundreds of dollars on this. This is very real. They do have these fireworks, and on this particular day in the wintertime, I would never go for one in July, because regardless if it's raining or not, there's still some very high risk and hazards. But on this particular day, I have to say I think this one makes some sense, at least to try it for 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honeman. Mr. Gutierrez, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to amend Mr. Honeman's amendment, if that's amenable to the body. I'd like to propose amending the end time from 1 a.m. to the stroke of midnight. I'm one of those who tends to go to bed early on New Year's Eve. When I was a younger man, I'd stay up and party, but thank you, Ms. Osiander. So I'd like to amend the amendment from the end time from 1 a.m. to midnight.
1 a.m. to midnight?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am?
12:01, yes.
12:01, okay.
So, then the 6 hours need to be revised also.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right now, we've got it with the last amendment. It's down to end at 1:30, and Mike is suggesting with an amendment, we ended at 12:01. Is that correct, Mike?
That is correct, sir. Mr. Holman's amendment would have had it end at 1. I'm asking for midnight, or 12:01.
Yes, Debbie?
I had thought that Mr. Honeman's amendment had passed.
It did.
Okay, so this is a new amendment?
This is a new amendment.
Thank you, yes, that was my mistake.
Yep. Mr. Gutierrez, anything else?
No, sir.
Ms. Osiander on Mr. Gutierrez's amendment?
No, I have something else.
Okay. Ms. Greg Jackson on Mr. Gutierrez's amendment? Okay. Please vote on Mr. Gutierrez's amendment. Come on. Come on, there. That was not approved, Mike. We're still with the 1 o'clock.
I'm calling all of you who voted no on that at 12:45 a.m.
Okay. Debbie?
I would like to hear from the administration, both from risk management aspect and public safety aspect, if I could. I see you back there, Glenn. No escape.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Osiander. Glenn Smith, head of our Risk Management Department, will address some of the concerns that the administration has.
Thank you.
Glenn Smith, S-M-I-T-H. So saying through the chair, my concern is enforcement. Mr. Honeman brought forth that issue, and because of some of the restrictions in the ordinance, I don't know how if the cops are going to have to run around with tape measures to measure 500 feet. Is that still in the last one I looked at? I believe so. Had some restrictions on distance between different. And secondly, and I've been here 33 years, it's taken a long time to get the fireworks out of Anchorage, and while winter is less of an exposure from my standpoint, still some of the roofs are dry, and some of the sidings are dry, and my concern would be business and personal property safety. And that's it, really. I like fireworks myself. I grew up 20 minutes from the Peace Bridge in upstate New York, and as much as I hate to admit this, Chief Mew and Assemblymember Honeman, I swam many times across the Niagara River with a bag of fireworks. So,
Mr. Smith, would you please talk about the injury aspect of it also, please?
pardon me?
The injury aspect.
Injury aspect.
Oh, yeah, certainly, and I should have brought that up. Personal injury from, as the young lady indicated, unexploded ordinances. The National Safety Group indicates that most of the injuries, and there's about 40,000 a year, are from, and we did them, and I'm sure you all did too if you had fireworks when you were children. Tie a couple of wicks together on some of them, and if you did it on cherry bomb, you could do some serious damage, or silver salute. So it's the abuse of the fireworks that become the problem. I know kids that have taken 30-06 empty shells, taped to a wooden block, slipped the firecracker into the shell like a little pistol, and slipped a .45 caliber shell over the end of it, empty one, through the primer and fired the shell. It was kind of a... But that said, I think fireworks are great for the celebration. I think we have great celebrations here in Anchorage. So, just my personal opinion and my professional opinion.
Debbie?
Is there anything you want to add, Chief Mew, or not?
Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Smith, I think the statute of limitations more than run out, sir, on any violations there.
Assemblyman Osiander through the chair. I'm not real familiar with the ordinance. I haven't seen the S version, so I hope I'm not wrong on my facts here. But it seems to me that we would make it legal to shoot fireworks on New Year's, but I don't know if this changes the fact that it's illegal to possess fireworks in the city, does it? And so I think we might be sending a mixed message, and we might have an enforcement problem to deal with the police department. We stop kids on 3rd of July coming across the bridges with loads of fireworks from Houston, but they say, hey, this is for, New Year's Eve. They still can't possess them. I mean, I just think we're sending mixed messages. Is it the hill I want to die on? I'm not sure about that. I like fireworks myself, blew them off as a kid all the time. I mean, I love fireworks, but we spent a long time in the city getting away from that, and it just seems to me that we're sending mixed messages there.
Thank you.
Mr. Starr, sir, anything? Thank you. Mr. Starr?
Yeah, we're speaking to the main motion of approval. Mr. Trainee, I like serving with you because you bring these issues forward, and they're always
we have
the bland, boring appropriations that we always seem to think. And what I hear is a couple things. I hear the reference to when I was a kid and all the other things that go with that. And I did that too. I'm a veteran of bottle rocket wars and stupidity out in my backyard with tying things together. And I learned a lot from that. I still have all my digits, but it's also the time that we're in that strikes to me as that, and I'm willing to risk it. I think it's probably going to go badly. You'll see blown up mailboxes and all the stories that go with that, but I'm going to be a yes vote on this, and I think it's just also time. We're beat down. The civilian population is tired, we're wore out, we hear bad news every day. Let's kind of go nuts for a while and see if we can't generate some new energy in 2011. A minute, Mr. Gutierrez, I almost was there with you on a minute, but, let it get them out of their system, and maybe it'll actually be beneficial. I don't hear them for 5 days. I just hear them for a while, and then they're done. I live in the valley. We have open spaces up Eagle River Valley. It's actually beautiful. I like it. We make an event of it family-wise, and, we may enjoy a bottle rocket war on my property. So, thank you.
Mr. Birch, we know where the bottle rockets are going off at.
Well, I guess some of the testimony related to the concerns, the potential impacts, certainly on animals, it certainly resonated with me. I think the first dog that my wife and I had was a beautiful Irish setter and disappeared on New Year's Eve, basically as a result of some of the impact of the fireworks. And I guess I will be a no vote on this. And again, there's a lot of good memories. Actually used to hold a explosive handler ticket, so I've actually done some pretty elaborate fireworks on my own. But I think that at this time and in our community, when we do have very elaborate public displays of fireworks, several times throughout the year, I just don't think this is the right time to do this. And looking at the time and some of the risk management issues and some of the enforcement concerns that were brought up, I will be a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Yeah, I'm going to go back in time myself a little bit. High school here in the 70s, all the way through working with the Alaska JCs. I was with the late Rodney Clark as a licensed power technician, putting on ground displays and several very elaborate fireworks shows. And all throughout my time, I keep recollecting many events, even during a set period at a set location in Mulcahy Stadium, where they know there's going to be fireworks and people bringing in the droves, bottle rockets and all the other fireworks that go along and laying them off at people's feet. And some of those are fairly a nuisance. And frankly, even then it was against the law, and it's been against the law pretty much my entire time being up here in Anchorage. And yet it's not a problem that's gone away or declined. It's actually gotten more and more prevalent. So I think, as Mr. Starr, I think he hits it. Let's give it a try. This ordinance, if passed, would go away in 2 years if the future body, or if I'm on the body then, decides that we've heard enough and it just isn't working well. If it goes south, I think 2-year period of trying it isn't a bad thing, and particularly because we recognize that we've all stated it's going on in this community, and it continues to be so.
Mr. Drummond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Quiet tonight.
Well, this one, I'm not going to be quiet on this one because I intend to vote against this. I've heard from many of my neighbors who have issues with post-traumatic stress disorder, animals. I actually agree with Mr. Birch on a number of these issues, and we don't often agree. But I think we do some beautiful displays in this town, professionally done displays. I enjoy being able to see them from my house or choosing to get closer to them, but I don't choose to have them in the backyard next door or in the street out front. That's the closer we live together, the more we have to respect one another's privacy and silence, as one of the lady who testified earlier told us. And for that reason, I'm going to be voting against this.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Well, I think Mr. Birch and I are going to cancel out each other's vote because on New Year's night, we actually sit in our house and we watch quite a fireworks display all over the hillside, and it's all for free. It's not organized. Some of them, I think they've got thousands and thousands of dollars invested in them. And my concern is if we ask our police to be shutting down all the fireworks displays that I see, as opposed to dealing with maybe some that were partying with too much alcohol. I'd rather have them spend their time on the alcohol than I would on the fireworks. So I'm going to be voting for favor. And I do like sunsetting new laws like this and having a chance to revisit it. So I will be in support.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Osiander, ma'am?
You know, if the argument is, well, it was great when I was a kid, then why do we have car seats? Why do we have bicycle helmets? Why do we have seat belts?
I think I voted
Why do we
against bicycle
prohibit,
helmets, if I remember
excuse me,
correctly.
sir, why do we prohibit riding up in the back of pickups, standing up, you know?
We used to.
I'm glad I'm engendering so many comments, but I do want to say that also the argument that people do it anyway seems a bit peculiar to me when I consider, should we then allow jaywalking? Should we then allow running red lights? Because I see a heck of a lot of both of those. I think that considering the rather horrific cases of animal cruelty that we've seen in this neighborhood, in this municipality for the last few years, the number of horses, the number of animals outside that can be really hurt by this. When I consider the wildfire safety issues that we've tried to address, I think not quite successfully in terms of clearing. I think the risk manager's comments about dry roofs and dry siding, I think, are right on point. And then the last point I want to remind you of is the chief, I think, makes a good point about a schizophrenic approach to code when you can't have it, but you can use it. I'm going to be a no vote.
Thank you, Debbie. Ms. Johnston?
I would like to make an amendment. I know that we have gotten discussion, but on line 17, since we've changed the hours of beginning and ending, I'd like to just take out the 6-hour period, just say, only be used beginning 9:30 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. So taking out used during the 6-hour period.
Is there a second? Second. Ask unanimous cleanup effort. That's approved. Thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments? Mr. Gutierrez, do you have another comment, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. You took me out of the queue a couple of times.
What?
Don't do that.
I did what?
You took me out of the queue.
I couldn't have taken you out of the queue.
You know, this is an uncomfortable one for me. Most of the time when we come up here and we have this packet full of papers, every single one of us knows how we're going to vote on an issue before it comes up. And I have to say, Mr. Starr's arguments were exceptionally persuasive. I was feeling one way, I was feeling a very different way after he spoke. Mr. Birch spoke exactly the opposite after he did, and he was exceptionally persuasive as well. Then you throw in the fact that my wife has threatened me that if I vote no on this, there will be trouble. So I'm left between a rock and a hard place. I see, when I was a kid. It was probably illegal when I was a kid. I didn't know. But my parents we had fireworks displays on the farm and 4th of July, and, there were a lot of grass fires. We didn't start any of them, but it was probably illegal then, and I think there are good reasons for it to not be legal. I think the strongest argument that I've heard tonight was from Chief Mew about the sort of schizophrenic nature of the law. It's illegal to possess it, but it's illegal to shoot it off. That would kind of be like saying it's illegal to possess marijuana, but it's all right if you smoke as much as you want. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I reject the argument that, everybody's doing it anyway. Well, my mom would have said, if everybody was jumping off a bridge, would that mean it was okay for you to do it too? We have a lot of laws that, there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of very nasty drugs, and yet we make them illegal. There are people committing heinous crimes, and they would do them anyway, no matter whether they're illegal or not, yet we still make them illegal. Not that this is a heinous crime, but I just reject that train of logic. Honestly, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote until I push the button. If I do vote yes, then we can blame it on Mr. Starr and on my wife. Thank you.
Mr. Wheeler, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Assembly members, I just wanted to clarify that this is not a situation where you can use but not possess. Under the provisions in this code, you can't actually possess the fireworks so long as you fit within the limitations here, including they have to be saleable fireworks under Alaska statute, and your proof of purchase has to be from a location outside the municipality of Anchorage.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from Assembly members before we vote? I need to weigh into this since I'm the one that brought this to us. I did this 3 or 4 years ago, Elvie, and what was interesting is Palmer and Wasilla took the same exact ordinance, put their name on it, and passed it. And the towns up there have not burned to the ground. And Jennifer, you're right. If you lived in Anchorage for any period of time, if you want to watch fireworks, go to the hillside and look down on the bowl. There is no enforcement in Anchorage. It's a joke. So let's admit what it is. Everybody runs up the valley, gets the fireworks, comes back in. On their porch, they light their sparklers so their grandkids and children can watch it, and then make sure no cop comes by to give them a ticket, which they're not doing anyway. So let's just let the people with their grandchildren, their children, teach them to use fireworks safely. And quite frankly, this world is not an injury-safe environment. Sometimes people make mistakes, and that's just the price of being alive. We hope it doesn't happen, but it does on occasion. And I remember the car seats we used to put our children in when they were born. Remember? They're made out of aluminum and nylon webbing. You put it between the driver and the passenger. Today, you've got to have a crash dummy seat to put the kids in. So please vote. Mr. Gutierrez. Lock it in. That was cute, Mike. That was approved. 7-4. As amended. Next one in front of us is item 14J, Ordinance AO 2010-88, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the municipality of Anchorage at the regular municipal election on April 5th, 2011, a ballot proposition, to authorize a majority vote for sales tax. And the author has advised me that what we want to do is open public hearing, but then he wants to have us send it to the budget committee.
That's correct. Yes, and we have I've shared earlier this evening a draft ordinance that would, in ballot initiative that we call the Taxpayer Protection Act, and basically it would effectively do the same thing as far as assuring that that all taxes are under the base tax cap.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Billy Ray Powers.
Yes, sir.
You've been staying here a long time tonight, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome to the meeting.
This one is most important this evening. Chris, thank you. We need to diversify our revenue stream to pay for this city. What scares me is that this body has been spending money like feeding sharks for about 10 years. And what terrifies me is that if we get this going, this tax, there has to be a really good, strong mechanism in place to keep this from just escalating the tax load on the citizens. And I don't know, is that what this is about? You're talking about it getting sent and something crafted? I would be very interested in what gets crafted. But let's at least get this going so that we can have a diversified revenue stream and take a little bit off the backs of the property owners here. Please vote yes on this thing.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wishing to testify, please come forward. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Neva Reese, R-E-E-C-E. I've been here before in relation to taxes. I own a little house in Mountain View. And I think, considering that my PFD, and I'm not opposed to a sales tax, but if I look at my PFD and I look at my property tax, what I end up paying per year for all the services I have in Anchorage is probably less than $100 a month. And I am just I'd like to just say, because I am very upset about people that come and talk about how badly they are taxed in this city. I think it's an extremely immature position to come in and complain to this body about taxes, and to hear anybody talk about how people are taxed too much is ridiculous. Because for that $80, $90, or $100 a month, I get fire protection, I get police protection, I get snow removal, I get my schools, I get all kinds of services, my libraries. And for people to come here and say that they are taxed too much, for anybody to say that this city spends too much money on those kind of services is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not opposed to a sales tax, but to say that the people paying property taxes are overburdened is a ridiculous position, just ridiculous. And the other thing I want to say while I'm at it, to see you guys sit here tonight and talk about you're worried about synthetic cannabis, so you're going to outlaw it. Everybody's shooting off fireworks, so what the heck, it's okay. It doesn't matter if it upsets people and if it upsets animals, because everybody's doing it anyway. And to pass a liquor license for Government Hill, which is a very small, semi-isolated community within Anchorage, I don't understand your logic, and I was kind of sad to sit here and hear that tonight. I came because I wanted to hear the budget stuff, but I had a meeting where I work and I couldn't make it, so I just felt like I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Questions from Assembly members? Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to testify, please come forward. Seeing and hearing no one, Chris, what do you want to do with this?
I believe I'd like to push this to the legislative budget or budget and audit committee, or budget and finance.
What we probably want to do is move to continue this and send it to the budget committee. If we could get a motion to that effect in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Julia, when's the deadline for ballot initiatives?
It's in January, I believe, 17th.
I think it's the 18th.
18th.
Yeah,
Okay.
through the chair. January 18th.
Yeah, we have a meeting on the 18th of January. We'll try to bring back something advisory to the committee. I would just propose, and maybe the chair can rule on the floor on this one, is that I enjoined Mr. Flynn's contributions to our committee, and it helped to have the additional personnel. So I would like to
Absolutely.
join Mr. Birch to the committee for the purpose of this.
I think that would be appropriate.
Introduction. So we'll meet. There is a Budget and Finance Committee meeting scheduled for, I think it's December 16th. I'll check on that, but
And we'll get this back in time if we want to put it on the ballot, sir.
we'll give it a try.
And
Is that all right with you, Chris?
That's fine, and as I indicated earlier, the resolution or the ordinance that would supersede this will be introduced on the 14th. That'll
Be introduced, it's already on the pre-agenda
Right,
for the
it's in the pre-agenda, it'll be introduced next week, and then it'll go to that same committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ask unanimously, no objection. We've taken that action on that item. We're now down to item 14K, Resolution Air 2010-341, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $50,000 from the state of
Waive reading.
Alaska. Thank you. This is Highway Safety Equipment Grant. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and considering public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Comments from assembly members. Please vote. That was approved unanimously by the body. Next item in front of us is Resolution Air 345, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $1,155,364
Waive reading.
from U.S. Department of Justice. This is a COPS hiring recovery program. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wish to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no on public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. That item was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us, item 14M, Resolution Air 2010-342, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $1,460,676 from the State of Alaska Department of Health and Human Services. This is Child Care Assistance Program. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no on public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Does none need, please vote. That item was approved unanimously. Next item in front of us is item 14N. Item 14N is Resolution Air 2010-346, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $125,000 to the state of Alaska. This is Emergency Management Performance Grant, EMPG activities. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing and saying no on public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. That item was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14O, Resolution Air 2010-347, a resolution appropriating $516,379 of Area Wide General Fund 101. This is a payment of labor settlement. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. Anyone at all? Hearing saying no on public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Second. Oh.
Moved in second. Any discussion from assembly members? Please vote. Ms. Johnson? That was approved by the body. Next item in front of us is item 14P. Item 14P is Resolution Air 2010-348, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage for the appropriation of $95,000 from the, this is for workers' compensation and automobile liability claims. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anybody wishing to testify, please come forward. State your name clearly for the record. Hearing and saying no on public hearings closed. What's the wish of the body?
Move to approve.
Discussion from assembly members. Please vote. That item is approved. That completes our agenda. We're now down to special orders, or are none I'm aware of. There are no unfinished agenda items. Item 17 is audience participation. If there's anybody that wishes to discuss any item with the Assembly, please come forward. Gee, Larry, I didn't know that's what you wanted to do. Harriet, seeing no one, we're now down to Assembly comments. Harriet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chris?
I would just like to wish a joyous 60th birthday to my very close friend, Alan Johnston, who turns 60 very soon, tomorrow. Thank you.
Jeez. Elvie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a Public Safety Committee meeting tomorrow, Mr.
Yes, there
Norman?
is. 12 o'clock, yes.
I won't be able to attend. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
going where, Elvie?
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be busy
Oh,
all
I
day
thought you had
tomorrow.
another fly off somewhere.
Well, I was going to go to Maui on Thursday, but, we'll see.
Winter weather.
I know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Jennifer.
No, thank you.
Where are you flying to?
Son,
Okay.
I'm going to the Mayor's Energy Task Force meeting first and then flying.
Pat?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Starr, sir?
No, sir.
Ernie?
No, sir.
Paul?
No, sir, I know for a change. No, sir.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to break the streak. I'm surprised that nobody else did a little bit. 69 years ago today, the United States forces stationed at Pearl Harbor were, as the President said, suddenly and deliberately attacked by the Empire of Japan. It's a holiday that, or a date that we, as years go by, seems to drift farther and farther into oblivion. There aren't as many. It's like when I was a kid growing up, there were fewer and fewer World War I vets in the 4th of July parade every year. That generation is leaving us. I know your father was of that generation and served bravely here in Alaska. I think it bears just a moment to say thank you to that generation, not just those who fought, but that entire generation, because sometimes we tend to overstate things, but to say that generation truly saved the world, I don't believe is an exaggeration. So thank you on behalf of myself to that entire generation.
Thank you, Mike. Debbie?
Thank you, Mike. And remembering Alaska just about had it worse than anybody in the state.
A lot of people don't even know about the 1,000-mile war that existed along the whole Aleutian chain. I'm thinking about all of our Alaskan natives that were relocated to southeastern Alaska. And if you listen to their accounts, they would rather have been prisoner of war, because the prisoner of war camps were better treated than Alaska natives were in the camps that the U.S. had for them. They were massively relocated. They were allowed to take a bag with them from some of the island villagers and just taken to a different part of Alaska for the war. It wasn't a good time to be an Alaskan for many of our people. Anyway, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned.